have how many people now? So Hazim, should I start straight away or would you like to do some intro first?
Morning, Zaki.
Morning.
Basically, since most of the staff know you already, I think we can start lah.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we are still 2 minutes before 9 a.m. So let's wait for another 2 minutes before we start officially. Okay. Okay, good morning again, everyone. Selamat pagi semua. Thank you for coming to this workshop. Thank you for spending your Friday morning to attend this little event and session, which I hope can be as interactive as possible so that we can all not just simply hear from me, but also perhaps we can all share each other's experience and opinion about issues in relation to the topic of today's workshop, which is on cross-cultural communication. Right. I guess most people here in UOW, KDU, would know me. My name is Zaki. I am officially the academic department head at the School of Communication and Creative Arts. Perhaps more people know me more as someone who coordinated the MPU subjects over here in the entire institution. All right, so I would like to also, before I move on, I would like to thank the organizers, TLC, Teaching and Learning Center, in particular, Mr. Hazim and also Mr. Gabriel for inviting me to do this workshop. I did this workshop or something similar last year. At that time, we had only about 5 or 6 participants, but I think this year the number of participants is a bit more. So thank you very much again for those of you who are here to attend this session. The plan or the schedule that is given to me is 9 to 1 o'clock, but definitely I won't go until 1 p.m. because I do need to prepare myself to go for Friday prayers for Solat Jumaat. So I will finish latest by 12:30. But how far we go in terms of maybe extending or shortening the workshop would depend a lot also on the interaction and the engagement that I get from all of you. Okay. All right, so let's move on. So this is cross-cultural communication here today. My name is Zaki. Yes, so that is basically the introduction. I've just mentioned to you my affiliation as far as the institution is concerned. So this is effectively our objective for today, which is to identify effective cross-cultural cross-communication strategies, to examine cross-cultural issues, and also to formulate some strategies to promote cross-cultural understanding, both at the individual and also organizational level. All right, so a bit of disclaimer. I would like to say this right from the start. In delivering this workshop, in the explanations I'll be giving, I would sometimes make reference to examples that are based on real cases or real observations, sometimes may touched upon or relate to some people that you know, or maybe to certain real events or real incidents that you may know also. My intention, if I were to do that, is not to shame anyone or to take it personally. This is more for us to share in terms of what are the areas that we can improve and to reflect upon our strengths and weaknesses. Definitely, I will not be revealing any names or anything like that, except if I were to explain or share any personal examples, and maybe I would be very clear in terms of this is something that I have experienced firsthand. All right, so that is the brief disclaimer that I would like to give at the start of this program. So let's now move on to a simple, oh, sorry, I should be putting this on slideshow. So let's start with a simple ice-breaking session with all of you here today. Can all of you tell me or share with us your name, your affiliation, as in which department or which school or faculty that you are from, your hometown, and also tell me your favorite color. Right, so let's start with, is Hazim a participant also? No. Okay. Let me see the participants list. Okay, I'll start from the list I see in the participants, right? First in the list I see over here, Dr. Hao. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hao from Faculty of from Department of Engineering from Penang, KDU Penang.
Okay.
Okay.
Your hometown?
I'm from Muar, Johor.
Oh, really? Okay,
Okay,
that's quite far. Muar and Penang.
Okay.
My hometown is Muar also. My father's hometown.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So what is your favorite color?
Sorry, pardon?
Your favorite color?
Oh, favorite color. Yellow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Siti Hajar?
Okay, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Siti Hajar Nadra. I am from School of Business and I'm from Klang. And my favorite color is pink.
Pink. All right, thank you very much. Next, Hanaliza.
Hi, morning. My name is Hanaliza Kamis. Can call me Hana. I am from School of Business. My hometown is Shah Alam, and my favorite color is blue.
Right, thank you very much. Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim. Okay, I'm from the Selangor campus examination department. My hometown is Myanmar, Yangon, and my favorite color is white. Thank you.
White. Okay, all right. Mira.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Mira, JV Rajasthan from that school. My hometown is Sudan Jaya. My favorite color is blue.
Blue.
Blue, yes.
Okay, all right. Hazim, are you here?
Yes, my name is Hazim. My hometown is Port Dickson, PD.
Okay.
And my favorite color is royal blue.
Oh, that's very specific, a specific type of blue. All right, thank you. Murina.
Hello, I'm Murina from Glamoury campus. I am living in section 16, Battalion Jaya. Favorite color is brown.
Brown. Okay, all right.
As always.
Noraish. Thank you. Noraisha.
Hello, hi, good morning. I'm
Morning.
from Penang campus, attached to Department of Language. My hometown is in Penang, and my favorite color is black.
Black. All right, thank you. Penny Tan.
Hi there, good morning, everyone. I'm Penny, head of HR from Penang campus. Born and bred in Penang. No favorite colors, but I like pastel shades.
All right, okay.
Nice meeting all of you.
Thank you very much. Right, pastel colors. True, I think that is it's a type of color, but then it's not
all
officially a
pastel
color.
shades. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Shahada.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Shohada. I'm from Admission and Record Office here in Penang campus. My hometown is in Jitra, Kedah. And my favorite colors are any shades of blue.
All right, thank you very much. Stella.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Stella. I'm from School of Business. My hometown is Kepong, KL, and my favorite color is a white color.
Okay. Next I see over here, Tan Pei Huan. Hi. Sorry, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
I thought that I turned on the mic already. I'm so sorry. I'm Pituan from Department of Computing, Penang campus. I was born in Penang, and my favorite color is red color.
All right, thank you very much. So there are a few others that we have in the participants list, but they have not joined the program yet. So it's okay. Maybe we can ask them other questions later on. All right, so what was the reason for me to ask you all of that question? First of all, of course, to know a bit more about the list of participants for this workshop today. So I can see that we have a good balance of participants from both campuses, Selangor, Glenmary, and also in Penang. Hometown, I guess, those of you who are working in Penang, your hometown is somewhere over there. And those of you who are working in Glenmary, Selangor campus, you are from the area, from the Klang Valley. So I think that is understandable. But the last question I asked about favorite color, why I sometimes like to ask this is I just would like to tease participants or people about a theory that we have in psychology called color personality. So this is just one example of a summary of information based on the theory of color personality. So if your favorite color is as stated over here, what is listed in the characteristics underneath that represents or that describes who you are as a person in terms of your personality and traits. Those of you, for example, who said that your favorite color is blue, you are considered theoretically someone who is loyal, empathetic, spiritual, idealistic, romantic, sincere, and so on. So those of you, for example, favorite color yellow, committed, responsible, thorough, faithful, helpful, sensible. So this theory, color personality, is very extensive. It's very elaborate. You can, search for various materials and references about this. However, in my years, maybe not so much over here since I joined UOW or KDU in the last 9 years. Previously, when I was teaching psychology, more psychology courses in my previous institution, two of the basic psychology courses that I used to teach was personality psychology, and the other one is motivation and emotion. So we cover a lot of theories in psychology in these two classes. I remember a couple of times I had students, because we would do exercise, we will expose students with personality tests, with a few other psychological instruments to measure various motivational traits and characteristics, self-esteem, self-efficacy, and so on. So there are times when students, when they took this test and then they got the results, they get very stressed. They say, "Sir, no, the test said I'm like this. The test said I'm like that. I feel so down. I feel so, not good about myself." Always bear in mind, we are dealing with human beings, and behavioral sciences in general, or social sciences in general, we are dealing with human beings and society, of course. Many things are theoretical. So because of that, we always need to qualify our judgment and conclusion that, a theory by its nature is something that can be true, maybe most of the time, because maybe it's a strong theory, has been tested a lot in academic research. But a theory is not a statement of fact. It's not a law of nature, right? So it's not something that defines you permanently in terms of who you are. So whatever test that you make, whatever tests that you take, whatever personality test results that you get, or even things like IQ test results and so on, does not define you as a person permanently, right? So likewise, also the issues that we are discussing today that relates to culture and cross-cultural issues, these are things that I know, right? Even though I may have certain opinion about things, maybe strong opinion about a few issues, I know that it's not necessarily the endpoint of the analysis, right? All of us, or many of us, may have like different opinion and different reactions to these situations and issues that we are going to discuss or look into today. And I very much welcome your comments and your feedback. I will be talking mostly throughout this session. I'll be asking questions from time to time. So please, whenever you want to interject or you would like to say something, you can raise your hand or you can put something in the chat box. I will come to that. We will discuss that later. We will discuss that as we move throughout this session. Okay. All right. So now a bit more in terms of me. Right. I perhaps need to qualify myself in terms of why do I do this? Because like I said at the start, I think most people here in UOW KDU would know me more as someone who coordinates MPU. So they assume that I am someone with a background in maybe history or politics. So that's why I handle MPU subjects. The fact of the matter is my actual background in terms of academic qualification is not in history, it's not in politics. My first degree or undergraduate degree was actually in psychology. Later on, I did my master's degree in an area which is very much related to this particular topic in this workshop. I was part of a program in a country quite far away. Some of you may know already, but some of you don't. Those of you who do not, I just look at this picture of me back in 2001. Yes, I was younger back then, maybe smaller also. Which country was this? Anyone knows? So just to cut things short, this is the country that brought you the phone Nokia in the past. This is the country that was famous for that. Now this is Finland. So I did my master's degree in Finland back in 2001, 2002 in a program that was called International Program, Master's Degree Program in Intercultural Counseling. Later on, it was rebranded to Cultural Diversity. Basically, the main focus of the program was to train us or to expose us to cross-cultural issues, but specifically in terms of how we integrate people who are coming to a new country. So this was in Finland because Finland is a country in Scandinavia and the majority of the people who were there are white and Caucasian. But around the 1990s and starting around the 1990s, the society in Finland began to be a bit more culturally diverse because they were accepting more and more migrant workers and also immigrants, asylum seekers from different countries around the world. In particular, they were receiving a lot of migrant workers from the Indian subcontinent, from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and then also from Eastern Europe, from certain countries in Southern Europe as well. And then later on, they also began to accept asylum seekers from African countries, Somalia, Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. So for a country which is largely homogeneous historically in Finland, to suddenly accept a large number of foreigners or people from foreign countries to their society, that required a lot of work in terms of how you actually integrate them into the mainstream and majority Finnish society. So I was exposed a lot in terms of how the program was done, in terms of the interaction, in terms of the workshops that was conducted on how to build that bridge in terms of increasing the level of understanding between the new group of people in the Finnish society together with the majority people over there. One rather fascinating experience I had when I was part of the program, I was part of a workshop, a 2-day workshop to discuss one issue only, and that was on female circumcision. Because in Finland, female circumcision is outlawed, it's not legal, but there are some groups of people who are new to Finland. They believe that this is a religious right that they have to do. So because of that, the Finnish government wanted to understand how this is done and try to maybe regulate this to a certain extent so that the rights or the freedom of religion of these groups are protected, but at the same time also the law of the country remains intact as well. So it's a challenge on that particular level. But of course, we are not going to discuss to that level over here. But I just would like to show as an example in terms of what I saw living in Finland for about 1.5 years. This is how they queue for taking the bus. And this was actually before the pandemic. This is how the Finnish society is. So just looking at how things are from one country to another, if you were to compare how people queue or line up over here in Malaysia or in some other countries in the world, that can tell you a lot in terms of your expectations and how you need to adapt to the whole environment. All right, so the other thing that some of you know also in terms of my background at a personal level, my wife or my late wife was from China. So this was my wedding photo in China back then. This is in Lanzhou, Gansu. And then this is one of our visits after my wife passed away already. So this was one of our visits a couple of years ago. But I won't be focusing anything on intercultural marriages today, unless that will be something that I will only respond or maybe talk about if anyone asks. But that will not be the focus, sorry. All right, so in any discussion about cross-cultural communication or cross-cultural issues, we need to define first what do we mean by culture, right? So these are some examples of how we define culture according to academic references. So you can see over here, the definition of culture covers things that are material and non-material objects, material things such as artifacts, and then it covers also practices. So it talks also over here, for example, number 4 about right and wrong. So that refers to what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And number 5 over here emphasizes on the word subjective, which means that it is something which is not necessarily universally accepted. It is something which is based on what is considered to be right and wrong from a cultural point of view, sometimes also at the level of individual point of view. Okay, but I always like to say when it comes to defining culture in a very, very overall, straight to the point manner is it's the way we do things here, right? So the way we do things over here can be everything in terms of both at the organizational level, in terms of work culture, in terms of processes and so on, and coming down also to the things as specific as the way that we talk, the way that we walk, the way that we carry ourselves, the way that we appear in different situations and things like that. Right, so we are going to touch upon some of those issues today. And again, I would like to emphasize or encourage any discussion, further discussions among us, inputs and opinions, and also sharing of experiences and opinions that you have. Okay, because culture, what we sometimes like to focus more is on the language part and on the artifacts part, and in terms of cultural objects, those are the things that are visible. In reality, the visible aspect of the visible aspect of culture is the minority part of culture, which is only about 20%. Maybe you can find some references who argue that maybe it can be as high as 30 or 35%. But whichever the case, that is an academic discussion. The overall conclusion is that the majority part or the larger chunk of things that we define part of culture is hidden. It is not visible, it is invisible. These are the things that relates to our communication styles, our beliefs about formality is stated over there, our codes of morality, our views about what is right and wrong, our values that we have, our understanding about what is the truth and what is perhaps not the truth. So these are the things that are part of the overall cultural mindset or cultural psyche that all of us have, that even we ourselves sometimes we don't actually realize it. our cultural behavior, our cultural mindset or cultural thinking would be manifested more in a form of behaviors when there are certain environmental situation that gives the cue for those things to come up. Now, what I mean by that is, sometimes there are some people who may not necessarily realize that they have some racist or not so good kind of thinking about different certain group of people, but it's something hidden over there. It only comes up when there is a certain situation that prompts you to react in a certain way, to say something, and then when you say something, it reflects something that's not so good in terms of your cultural understanding about others. So that is something that requires some reflection. All of us come from our own specific background. I do not want, all of us just now to introduce ourselves to the level of our family background and so on. But all of us, from time to time, I like to say this to students and also to my own children, sit back and reflect, in terms of what you have done, the things that you have said, whether or not you have said something appropriate or inappropriate, because these are the things that you sometimes realize, sometimes you don't. And it's good also for you to have friends and family members, maybe or people are close to you who are honest enough to be able to tell you that, you shouldn't have said that, or maybe you shouldn't have, done something like that, so that and you can change, so that you won't repeat again in the future. All right, so moving on, let's try and maybe test ourselves a bit about how much do we know about the cultures of others. Okay, let's take a test. Take out your pencil and pen and answer this set of questions. No, okay. Yeah, I actually was thinking about doing that. Actually give you a short quiz. Maybe no. We'll look into maybe some examples of questions, and these are actual questions from previous MPU classes. Now, we actually did have an MPU class before that was specifically referring to culture and society. At the diploma level here in Glen Marie campus, we had a course called Malaysia Culture and Life, where we actually asked students about knowledge in reference to cultural practices. So let's look into some of these questions and see whether we know the answers or not. The thing about when I put in on slideshow, I can't see your faces. Can I do that? If you raise your hand, I can't see it. That's my issue now. Is there a way that when I present, I can see the names of participants in case you raise your hands? I can see that maybe I can.
Saki, I think you cannot see.
Cannot, huh?
Yeah, because sometimes in the meeting, I also cannot see anything. So I have to ask somebody to just let me know, just like monitor that who is anybody right in the chat box or anything.
So that's not
unless Hasim can advise us. I cannot find one.
Yeah, I can put the setting where I can see my face, yes, but I can't see others. I can't see your list of participants in case you raise your hands. I cannot.
Or maybe you can pop out the content. There's an option pop out up there.
Which one?
I've got a pop out option.
View under view.
When you share the screen,
okay.
There's a pop out option.
Okay. Share screen.
And you share first, and then you got a pop out options up there. Just beside chats. Oh, you don't have. You don't have.
I like to see the name, the list, in case anyone raised their hands and they want to say something. That's just the point. But anyway, I think what I can do is I am sharing my screen, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so what I can do is I can do something like this, which is not nice, but
it works.
That's the only way that I think you can see my screen at the same time. I can also see, okay. But it doesn't work. My animation doesn't work then. If I were to put it like that, now it becomes full screen. Never mind, it's okay. But I think I want to emphasize on the setup where you can raise your hand and you can speak and say something against or in reaction to any of the questions over here. Because again, like I said, I don't like to believe that whatever I'm covering over here, in my opinion, that I share is the definitive point. There could be differences of opinion. There could be something that you feel, to the contrary or differently. I would very much welcome that you share your views about this. Okay, so let's look into the first question over here. Cultural taboo in the Malay language is referred to as what? I won't be asking the Malaysians, maybe Kin. Kin, you know or not what this is?
Zaki, what is bersimpuh? Bersimpuh, I also know what's bersimpuh.
Bersimpuh is sitting down on the floor, the
Oh,
way
I
that you
see.
sit. Macam apa tu? The way that you sit like you are on prayers.
Okay.
Right. What's the
don't
answer?
know.
Yeah. Answer is pantang larang. Cultural taboo in the Malay
Pantang
language
larang.
is referred to as pantang larang. So basically it refers to the do's and don'ts. So pantang larang are not part of the legal system. It's not, in terms of things that are there in the law or the constitution. No, it's not even something that relates to religious rulings like what is forbidden and acceptable, halal and haram. No, this is pantang larang is just referring to things that you should do and should not do. Mostly the shouldn't do part, the taboo part, that we learn from oral communication, right? From family communication, especially from our grandparents, would tell us not to do this, not to do that, and so on. All right, so there's a lot of these things. I won't be looking into too many examples of that. But let's look into this one. This relates more to cross-cultural communication in terms of when you meet someone. For Malay Muslims in Malaysia, each handshake will usually be followed by putting the hand on the chest. Again, this is not something that everyone does, but you see this amongst a lot of Malay people. After they shake someone's hand, they put the hand on the chest. So what does that signify? What's the answer? So this signifies the following except. So every answer, all the options over here is correct except one that is considered to be wrong.
C.
Okay, Kian said the answer is C.
My
I just
answer
know
is
it
C.
got meaning.
D.
Meaning. Yes. Anyone
D
else?
is the answer.
What's the answer?
D. Donkey.
Donkey.
B.
Okay, we have a variety of answers over here. That's good. Okay, let's look into each one of this to show that the meeting is appreciated. That should be correct. That should be right. To show that each handshake will dismiss all negative thoughts. That is a bit heavy. To show that we value the person by putting our hand near to the heart. I think that is acceptable. I think A and C is pretty clear. D, to show that each promise made will be kept. Now, I can tell you based on the answer scheme, the answer is D, to show that each promise made will be kept, because this is not necessarily about agreeing about keeping promises. Option B, yes, it's a strong claim, but it is arguably still acceptable, because when you shake someone's hands and you put in the heart, in a way you are clearing your thoughts or anything that is, maybe cultural, bad perception or anything that may have happened during the interchange or conversation between you and this person, dismiss all of that. We are in a way kosong, right? Everything is now 0. So that is something that an implied meaning when it comes to doing this. Now, understandably, right, those of you who answered B, the answer can actually be correct, right, from a certain point of view. So here is where, again, illustrating the point I was making just now, we are dealing with cultural behavior or human behavior in general. There is no clear definitive answer. So when it comes to this, putting this in an exam question before, yes, it can be questionable, but from what I know, when the MPU lecturer put this question in the exam, this was actually based on a reference. And the reference gave the answer is D. So that is from the point of view of the author of that book, to show it's not about showing that each promises will be kept, right? But anyone, you feel strongly that the answer should be B? Would you like to maybe explain your views? Sorry, what happened? What did I do? What happened to my slide? Okay. All right. So yeah. So accept over there. Accept means yeah. So everything is correct. One is considered not to be correct. So the other thing, I'm sure many of you over here are lecturers. When we do MCQ questions, the instruction is actually not about which answer is right or wrong. The instruction specifically is which answer is the best. And you know, in arguments that you may have, you know, I think that is the best answer, not that one. I remember I had an argument about this once with one of my professors when I was a student. He put me down and said, it's not about your opinion, it's about what the book says. Right? Okay, but of course, you know, we are not dealing with examinations over here. Those of you who feel that B is the answer, I think it's something which is a valid argument to be made. But of course, then the answer that is given is actually D. All right, now look at this picture. Anything wrong over here? What is wrong with this picture? From a Malay point of view, from a Malay culture point of view.
Left hand.
Left hand.
Left hand, right? So the Malay culture, right? The use of left hand is really something that you should try and avoid as much as possible. Not just in terms of when you eat, and of course, eating, obviously you need to use your right hand, but also when it comes to when you pass an object to someone, right? You should, as best as possible, use your right hand. You will notice that many Malays, if they have no choice, they have to pass something using their left hand, they would actually apologize. Sorry, tangan kiri. Maaf, sorry, I'm using my left hand. Because it's, again, it's a cultural taboo that I know growing up, you know, throughout my years, I spent some time with my grandmother before, who was a very traditional person. She would really school us if we were to do anything using our left hand. Especially when it comes to picking or touching something, especially food item, don't use your left hand at all. I think you know the reason why, from a Malay point of view, why the left hand should not be used, because the left hand is used only for one particular main purpose. Okay. Right. Next one over here. Again, this is arguably a question that can be argued. Well, I think this should have a clear answer to this. The following are correct statements about giving or receiving a gift according to Chinese culture, except which one? What is the answer?
Except a B. It is
Yeah, I
best
think
to
the
wrap
answer
gifts
should
in
be
white or
B.
black.
When you wrap gifts and you give it to someone from a Chinese cultural point of view, what is the best color to be used?
Red.
Should be red, huh? Other than red, what else? Yellow should still be okay, isn't it? Any bright colors, right? Now, why white and black should not be used? Because it is these are colors that represents death or bad luck, and things like that. Is it demon?
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, like yeah, gold color is true. Yes, any bright colors I think can be used. I remember years ago here in KDU at that time, I had a student who, Chinese female student, who was saying this to me. She said, you know, because her family, she said, is very traditional. Also, grandparents are still around, and they would insist when you go for the family reunion dinner for Chinese New Year or during Chinese New Year Eve, everyone has to wear red or bright colors. So she said, I don't agree with this culture, So what I did, sir, I went to the dinner wearing my wizard costume, like Harry Potter, all black. So I just told her, asked her, why did you do that? I said, I guess I want to make a point that I don't believe in all these cultural things. So my view always when it comes to this, and the same thing I tell my kids and to students also nowadays, because you do have some of them who don't like to follow this. They think all of this is unnecessary and so on. I would normally say them only this one small point. Following this, right? Following the colors that your elders are asking you to wear is not going to kill you. It's something that is just a choice or color that you for you to go to an event. The main reason for you to do that would be to just make everyone happy and to make everyone comfortable. When you go there and wear something black, or in our case over here in Malaysia, if you go to an event and you wear something not appropriate to the situation, like maybe revealing clothes or transparent clothes and so on in a religious event, you say, no, I don't care about all of this and so on. You are just attracting attention to yourself and you are making people uncomfortable and the whole environment turns sour. So what is the purpose of doing that? Right? So if you feel strongly about certain things, the best thing to do is to talk about it. Don't, act in such a way that makes people uncomfortable. That's normally what I would say to students and also to my own kids. Now, this is eating rice on banana leaf. What is the correct way of folding the banana leaf after you finish your meal? Is it, outwards or is it inwards towards you? My answer over here, yes, it's towards you, right? But what does that represent when you put it towards you? Means what?
You appreciate the meal is really
You appreciate the meal, but then if you were to do it the other way around or the opposite way, right?
You
Outwards.
You don't
means
like
that
the
you
food.
don't like the food. Is that really true? Mira, is that really something that people actually do? Have you seen anyone who was not happy with the food actually do that?
Okay, normally in the Indian culture,
Yes.
if you were to have a meal there, they will fold the dish outward. If you go for a happy function like wedding,
If they don't,
festival,
if they're not happy.
no, it's not that. If you attend a funeral, for example,
Oh, funeral, they do that.
funeral,
Okay.
and if they have a meal on a banana leaf, which they normally don't do nowadays, but if they do is, what they will do is it's how to say, it's a practice to fold the leaves outwards as is you acknowledge the event that it's a sad event, and
Alright.
to attend something which is a happy, nice, how to say, a festive or a wedding, then you fold the leaf inward to say that I'm
You
happy
are-
to attend this function. Yeah, I'll come back again.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think that is a very nice additional point for us to take note. If you were to fold it inward, yes, generally it is a sign of appreciation that you approve the food is nice and so on. But as Mira was saying, you have to also look into the occasion specifically. Yeah? If you're attending a wedding, yes, that's also what you do, right? Because it's a joyous occasion, so you want to have things inward towards you, the joy, positive vibes, and so on. But if it's an event which is a sad event like a funeral, so you put it outward, right, as a way to acknowledge that this is a sad event. So I think, Mira, thank you very much for educating us on that particular point. So remember, so if you go to any of your friends' house or any event where you are served something like this, generally, yes, fold it inward, but understand also, appreciate also the occasion, the specific occasion that you are attending for. All right, now when it comes to chopsticks, because now I'm using this, I can't use the animation side. It's already revealing the answer. Leaving your chopsticks, right? So why is it that you cannot do this? Putting the chopsticks upright like that. What does that symbolize?
Joystick.
Joystick, as in is it specifically
In the
prayers or is it something else?
In the prayer or in the even for the funeral. Yeah.
Now, I'm just curious, if anyone would do something like this, have anyone of you seen, especially our Chinese friends over here, what is the kind of reaction that you have seen? Maybe some people do when they see someone does or do something like this.
We will ask the somebody that did like that, just say that, okay, don't do like this. Immediately,
Okay.
we will just react. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that is something I think we all need to know, because I think for some of us who are maybe not aware of the culture, so accidentally you may actually do this because it's a convenient thing, right? Especially if you're eating something that like sticky rice and so on, right? So you don't want the chopstick to fall down or to roll over, so you just stick it like that. But be careful not to do this. Okay, because it's considered to be, not to say offensive, right, but it's something that is very much inappropriate because it represents prayers or praying, especially when it comes to praying during funeral, right? This is a diagram to show the chopsticks etiquette, but this is more in reference to Japanese culture. So from a Chinese point of view, is all of this the same? Do we agree with all of this over here, Chinese in Malaysia, or there are certain things over here only in Japan, but in China or amongst the Chinese over here, this is okay? Now, the using of chopstick and then passing food around from one bowl to another, I think that is something that I see over here in Malaysia. Chinese people, we don't do that a lot anymore, and we use spoon to take the dish to our bowl. But definitely, any one of you who have been to China before, like me, you would notice that in China, it's still something that is very much practiced. They will use chopstick to take food from the main dish, from the main serving. And that could be something that some people are not comfortable with. But other than that, I think these are pretty common. I know myself also. I've made that mistake before in my interaction with my Chinese friends over here in Malaysia. I'm okay. I like to think that I'm very competent when it comes to using chopsticks, but when it comes to eating dumplings, boiled dumplings especially, it can be very slippery. It's difficult for me to actually clip it. So sometimes to make a shortcut, I would just stick it and then eat it. So that's not something that you should do, especially when you are around others. It's not going to be something that is nice. The perception will not be something nice. So don't do that. All right. So if you find it difficult to use chopsticks to eat certain types of food, just use a fork and spoon. All right. So that is normally what I would advise to people also, to my kids as well, especially. All right, so this is more in terms of etiquette as far as cultural norms, honorific over here in Malaysia, which is a huge thing that we need to be aware of. All right, the Yang di-Pertua Negeri of Malacca, Penang, Sabah, Sarawak are entitled to the honorific. Which one? Anybody knows? What is the answer to this? Yang Amat Berbahagia. No, Yang Amat Berbahagia is actually for actually what? Yang Amat Berbahagia. Can someone check? I think the answer is C. Answer is actually C. Tuan Yang Terutama.
C. Tuan Yang Terutama. Yeah.
Duli Yang Maha Mulia is for the Agong only.
Agong.
And Sultan of States. Yeah. Yang Amat Berbahagia is to be used to the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, but when it comes to letters that you write, Yang Berbahagia, Datuk so and so, Tan Sri. Yang Amat Berbahagia would be higher lah, should be like the Deputy Prime Minister and the Prime Minister. Yang Amat Berhormat is also used for the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, but in the context of in the Parliament, because they are members of Parliament. So you use the word YB, Yang Berhormat, in reference to they are politicians, as in representative of their parliamentary area or the state election area. So Yang Amat Berbahagia, Yang Amat Berhormat is for, in a way, for the same people, but in different contexts. One is when they are in the role in the government, like Prime Minister, Yang Amat Berbahagia, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. But if you're referring to Anwar Ibrahim as Member of Parliament or in the Parliament, Yang Amat Berhormat, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, Ahli Parlimen Tambun. Right. Okay. So Tuan yang terutama, this is in for the governors and head of state in states that do not have sultans or Raja, Malacca, Penang, and so on. Now, this is something that maybe, again, some of us may take for granted or you feel this is not important, but if you are working in any area where you need to deal with government officers, government agencies, and so on, you need to know this, especially if you are dealing with your organizing events. And you need to, address or do the opening greetings and address all the VIPs that are around. You need to know this. There's a whole SOP, buku panduan or guideline, right, given by the Jabatan Perdana Menteri, Prime Minister's Department, and also from the Palace Office, Istana Negara, in terms of what are the specific honorifics that you need to use for specific people, specific title, specific government ranking officers, and so on and so forth. So if anyone were to enter into government service and to become Pegawai Takbir Diplomatik, PTD, government officer, part of the training that you have to go through is you need to go through a test or a program where you are exposed to all of this, and you have to pass the test so that you know how to address all these issues. Again, we cover this in our MPU courses. Again, not to necessarily burden students about this, you have to memorize this and so on, but just to expose everyone to the fact that this is part of the culture and system over here in Malaysia. So all of us at one point or the other, definitely we will have to deal with people in the government for various reasons, maybe official, maybe organizational, maybe personal. So you need to, it's good for us to know in terms of how we address people, right, appropriately, according to the occasion, according to their title, their rank, and so on. So in Malaysia, one has to accept it's still a country where tradition is still very strong, power distance, a framework that we have in organizational psychology, we call it power distance, is still very high over here in Malaysia. So we need to respect that. If you feel strongly against this, again, this is not the way that you to respond this and you rebel, you don't use this and say, I don't care about this, I don't want to follow this, because you are just inviting trouble to yourself, especially when you are dealing with any official occasion. All right. So this is one example of it. And Perdana Menteri, Yang Amat Berhormat, and so on. So the list actually is a lot. It's a lot more that you can see, but they are as specific as what you can see over here. I can, Keen, yes, I can pass you the documents later on. We should have, I think, a reference in English for you to refer to, so that we all know. It's good for us to know about how things are done, so that we don't embarrass ourselves in terms of not properly acknowledging or using the proper honorific and greetings to the VIPs that we have. All right, so thank you very much for all your feedback and answers just now. So what was the whole purpose of that small exercise? To test your knowledge in terms of your views, your knowledge about cultural practices of your own culture and also the cultures of others especially. The reason is that when we talk about cross-cultural communication, academic studies have clearly shown one of the main barriers for cross-cultural communication. What means is what are the factors that contributes to the weaknesses or problems when it comes to cross-cultural communication is lack of cultural knowledge. So when you lack cultural knowledge, then you lack cultural competence. So when you lack cultural competence, your cross-cultural communication skills also will be weak, because you do not know what to talk about. You do not know about the people that you're interacting with. So knowing them is the first level when it comes to increasing your cross-cultural communication skills. So when you know more about them, then you have things to talk about. You know at least to a certain extent, what needs to be done, the do's and don'ts and things like that, then you can negotiate or maneuver your way in a much better way. So always have that in our minds, that it's always good to learn about the cultures of others, cultures of ourselves as well. Right? Again, the same thing I always like to say to my kids, because I have kids also from the from this young generation. They feel I don't like this, I don't like that, and so on. I say to them, you know, this is not going to kill you, right? Learn so that you know what to do and you don't embarrass yourself, and you do not embarrass other people as well. That's the whole point, right? You don't want to make things awkward and, you know, uncomfortable for the people around you. So learn and know how things are done, and then should be okay. If you want to change things, you change in yourself. And maybe you yourself, you don't want to have formality too much in terms of how you deal with people. That will be something that you can have as part of your individual choice. But when you are, you know, working around with people in the society, then you need to know how things are done, so that again you can get things done, and you can get things done in a way that is constructive, that is positive as well. All right, so that concludes the first part of this workshop. Now I would like to move on to the second part. I will just go through first, and I hope we are okay to continue. But if anyone, of course, need to leave, go to the toilet and so on, please, you are free to go. I can't see you also, of course, right? But I would like to move on, except for maybe there's one point later on I will be asking all of you to do something. But that will be, I think, coming in about 10 slides after this. All right, so we now move on to the second part, which is to identify effective cross-cultural strategies. Now, this is based on a reference that I've been using when it comes to conducting workshops for intercultural communication or cross-cultural communication. This is what they refer to as the cross-cultural checklist. So it's a good thing maybe for us to have, not necessarily having it as a checklist by itself, but just have it as a reference and communicate and talk to yourself whenever you are going to a place where you are going to meet people from a different culture, either in a new organization, or maybe moving to a new country, or maybe expecting visitors from a different country coming to visit you, as what we are having more and more now over here in UOW Malaysia. Myself, I've had the opportunity to meet with visiting students in the past 2 months from Hong Kong, right, from UOW Hong Kong, and then also from UOW Australia. And of course, we have also ongoing and continuously a group of students coming from Vietnam and also from Japan for the English intensive English courses. So it's good for us to know a bit in terms of what are the things that maybe we can remind ourselves, the things that we can do, and maybe the things that we cannot do, right? So these are some of the things that relates to that. First thing is, should I anticipate different attitudes about the acceptability of asking personal questions? Personal questions, do you ask that when you meet someone for the first time? I guess for most people, that would not be, the answer would be no, right? You should not be asking personal questions straight away. What are examples of personal questions? Anyone? What kind of personal questions that if you were to ask someone, or someone asks you when you meet that person for the first time, you find that to be really awkward or not appropriate?
Are you married?
Are you married?
Very
Yeah.
forward. Yes.
Yeah. Your marital status, right? That is a
Yes.
personal question. If you ask that first time when you meet someone, rather that is rather odd. How about your age? If someone asks you straight away, what is your age? Are you okay with that?
I'm okay.
Okay. The rest of you, are you okay? I think weight is a bit extreme. Really, if someone were to ask you straight away, what is your weight? Height, maybe, especially if you are really tall. Maybe it's some people will be very curious how tall you are. But yeah, I think if you suddenly ask someone how much you weigh, I think that's a bit weird. Unless you are, running some kind of a health club or physiotherapy program, maybe yes, you need to know the weight of the person. But other than that, I don't imagine that would be appropriate. Salary, yes, I think that's not going to be something nice also. Even when it comes to interview sessions, right? Some of you maybe, right, like myself, right? Some of you are in the same position that you probably will be interviewing or have interviewed people who have applied to join the organization. I feel that when you meet someone for the first time, right, and you are interviewing someone, you don't ask straight away what is your current salary. That is something I think is not nice lah. And also not nice if you're applying for a job, immediately you ask what is my salary that I'm going to get. I think for me personally, whenever I have that situation, someone straight away asks me about a salary package right from the start during the first interview. That is, you know, something that I would flag, you know, possible not so good point about this applicant, right? Because those things should be discussed much later, right? Discuss more in terms of, you know, the work itself, job description, job responsibility, and things like that. All right. Yeah, I think weight, salary, age, I think it depends, I guess. All right. Should I anticipate different attitudes towards the acceptability of humor and emotions? Yeah, how many children do you have? True, I think that is something that, yeah, I thank you, Narisha, for bringing that up, because that is something that I have made a mistake also, because I guess some of us, like myself, tend to assume when you meet someone who is married, you assume that that person already has children, and you ask them, how many children do you have? And then when the person answers, I don't have any children, suddenly the conversation becomes a bit awkward, isn't it? So I think when it comes to that question, how many children do you have, don't assume that people have children. And you need to understand, we need to understand also, as I've learned myself, that asking that question to a person who has been childless, right, is a very sensitive issue. And it's something that, you know, you are indirectly hurting, or, you know, hurting the person's feelings, or, you know, making the person feel uncomfortable. So don't do that, right? So don't assume that. Yeah, at the same time, also don't assume that they actually want children, right? So I think the question of asking about children totally, or in any way, I think should not be part of the first conversation that you have. These are the issues now that I've learned, that you don't ask, you just see the flow of conversation, see whether that will come up or not, right? So it will come up naturally, eventually, and you will know whether this person has this, how many children, and so on and so forth. Because people who have children normally will talk about their children, like me sometimes, or many times. So we do that. We tend to do that. So when you see people do that, then you know already that this is a okay subject matter to come into. But don't go and introduce that subject matter straight away. Okay. All right. Now coming back to the second point over here, acceptability of humor and emotions. Now humor, especially in terms of making jokes, I think this is something that I have learned. I'm sure many of you also have observed and maybe have experienced yourself, where certain jokes are made and the jokes were terrible jokes, right? It was really not funny. Any examples anyone would like to share? Maybe I can share one, a very recent one I had. Yeah, I was telling you just now that I actually met a group of UOW Australia students recently. I think it was just about 2 weeks ago. So I was actually asked by the organizer, by SAC, to run a talk, something similar like this, on intercultural communication. So we came to this point about humor, and I was just sharing this example. I don't know, I'm sure some of you at least know this particular comedian by the name of Trevor Noah. You know who's Trevor Noah? Trevor Noah, yeah, used to be the host of The Daily Show, but now I think now he's back doing stand-up comedy. Trevor Noah, during one of his Daily Show session, he has this thing where in between recordings, he would actually have some kind of impromptu interaction with the audience. So there's one video that you can actually see, if you were to Google Trevor Noah Daily Show Australian accent, Aussie accent. So Trevor Noah was making this joke saying that Australian accent is very unique, because it's always the tone is always upwards. So because of that, Australians, even when they say sad news, or they try to inform someone about a sad news, it doesn't sound sad. It sounds very confusing. So the example that Trevor Noah actually said was, you know, if you need to tell someone that someone has died, your mother has died, right? So the Australian accent is a bit going up. So they say, your mother has died, right? So it's like it doesn't seem like it's a very sad tone. So he was just making that joke. And I was sharing this with the Australian students. I saw the Australian students, many of them started to look at me in a very, you know, not so nice way and see this is a bad joke. And I began to realize that, yeah, this is a bad joke. It's not something for us to actually, you know, make fun about. All right, so that is something that I've learned. Yes, I think we respect and understand the different accent that we have when it comes to the way that we speak, but making jokes about that, I guess for someone like Trevor Noah, it's okay, but for me, no, right? So it's not something that you need to also know your crowd. Trevor Noah is addressing a crowd in America where people are, in a way, in the mood of making fun about anything and everything. But when you are dealing with a crowd where these are students and possibly there are students from certain formal, background and so on, you shouldn't be making reference to jokes like this. All right, so that's example number one. Anyone would like to share any example, bad jokes that you've heard over the years? No, no one? Okay, let me share another one, all right? And this is something that I know happened in reality. And this is something, again, not to make reference to anyone in personal, but it's something for us to learn so that we know what are the things that we can and cannot say. Now, when it comes to, you know, when you hire someone, right? Sometimes we do look into also the cultural background of the person. So there was this one occasion where someone was making this statement like, you know, we don't like, or sometimes it's difficult to hire Malay female workers because, you know, they go on maternity leave a lot. Malay families have lots of children. It was supposed to be like a joke or like an example from a lighter, from a joking point of view. But you know, you tell that to a crowd and your audience are people who are from different background, including Malays as well. You find that to be something which is culturally, it's a cultural stereotype. And to a certain extent also bordering towards prejudice. So you shouldn't be making that as something as a joke. You know, it's you can maybe refer to or discuss issues or factors like that in your internal kind of discussion. But when you are doing some kind of like an open forum or discussion with someone or with a group of people, you know, don't make reference to something like that because you are stereotyping, right? So same thing. Any examples of jokes that are referring to any racial groups in a stereotypical manner. The Indians are like this, or Chinese are like that, Malays are like that. Don't make that, right? So that is something that we need to be really careful about. Okay. Other than that, what I find normally to be an issue when it comes to the way that we communicate is the pronouns or the names that we use when you call others. And this is something in Malaysia, it happens a lot. Sometimes on certain occasions it's okay because between close friends, sometimes we use words like you call someone by their nicknames or we use certain cultural terms and so on. But there are moments or overall we should try and avoid them. What I mean is, you know, like like in Malay, sometimes we call someone just mat. So it's just in general we call someone like that. When some people when they call a Chinese person and just call ape, amoy, and then Indian person just Indian boy tambi. So that is you know, not nice to be used. I know all of us grow up in environments where maybe our elder folks, our uncles and aunties, or even our own parents would use terms like that. But I think we ought to be better. We should not be using that, right? Unless it's something that you know, the people that you are communicating with, they are totally okay with this because you are such close friends and so on. Maybe that's okay. But even that also, I like to tell students and also my kids especially, try to avoid that. Right? Don't make it a habit that you use words, generic terms or call names like that, because you know it's bordering towards being disrespectful to the person. Acknowledge the person by using, you know, proper names or proper pronouns, and not just simply use these cultural terms. Right? Yes, depending on the situation, definitely not in the first meeting. Right? But there are things that are very good in the way that we use, like, you know, some foreigners, when they come to Malaysia, they get very confused. You know, when you go to a restaurant, you call someone boss, uncle, then auntie. It's not your uncle, it's not your auntie, but you still call that person uncle and auntie. Those are good. Those are actually respectful kind of, you know, reference for you to use, but not those cultural terms. And I think we ought to try and stop doing that, or making it something that is, don't normalize that anymore. Using words like ape, amoy, tambi, and mat, that kind of thing. Right? So no lah, please don't do that. Sometimes also it could be more of a power distance thing, right? You call someone like a younger female colleague, you call her girl, or you call, you know, someone younger than you boy. And these are your co-workers, but they are younger than you. You call them in such a way. Not nice also lah, right? Because respect should be both ways. Of course, the younger colleagues ought to respect the seniors, but the other way around also should be there as well. Okay. Now, the last point over there, culture, this is in terms of acceptability of interrupting. Now, this is something that I can tell you my own personal experience. When I first came to Finland, I was quite not to say shocked, but I was not used to people over there. When you do class presentation, the teacher, your classmate will just simply interject and interrupt you during your presentation. So the first time when I was doing my presentation, when I was there, I remember when I started my presentation, I actually said to my classmates and to my professor, don't interrupt me. Ask your questions later on at the end of my presentation. So that was not right lah. I was imposing my own cultural preferences, so to speak, onto another cultural situation. So I think you ought to be able to be adaptable when it comes to things like this. Yes, you may come to a certain environment where interruption during meeting or during speeches is very common. It's considered acceptable and some very normal. But if you are coming from a background where this is not so normal to you, maybe you need to get used to it. Right? Most of the time, the interruption is, you know, it's just part of the process. It's not something which is personal. It's just, you know, the way things are done in terms of discussions and, you know, how meetings are conducted. Yeah, thank you, Shuhada, for forwarding this Maxis advertisement. Yes, I think it talks about, you know, how you address people. Okay, yeah, example of that joke. Sorry, I forgot to change this one. But anyone would like to share any examples or other bad jokes that you may have heard over the years? Maybe if you don't want to say it, you can actually put it on chat so that everyone can read about that later on. Again, I would like to emphasize that these examples that I'm explaining or sharing with you, it's not about trying to criticize anyone, you know, personally. It's about, you know, for us to remind ourselves, these are the things that perhaps we can improve in terms of the way that we communicate with others. Because when we talk about culture, cultural groups, it's not just about people from different ethnicity and religious background. Age groups are also cultural groups. Because we know also, if you were to deal with people who are younger than you, they have their own culture, they have their own way of speaking. So we also, maybe we have our certain preferences. So we need to try and how we can, you know, stay effectively when it comes to communicating and understanding each other. Okay, that's the point. All right, so next point over here, should I anticipate different expectations of expression of criticism of anger? Now, here is where, again, more of a cultural thing over here in Malaysia, probably because we are more of a traditional society, right? More collectivistic and so on. We don't necessarily welcome or very much, we are not comfortable when you see expressions of anger. But again, it depends on the person that you're dealing with. I've seen a couple of examples, like my first job experience was actually not in academia. I was working for a while for the United Nations Office for Refugees, UNHCR, is it? United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the office over here in Malaysia. I remember there was a time that we had someone quite senior in the office, someone who was a bit temperamental. And whenever he was, wanting to emphasize on a certain point, he would really raise his voice during meetings and really to the point that even like pointing fingers to people. But the fascinating about him is that after the meeting, things get to normal, right? Like he's only like that during the meeting, but after that, nothing, right? He would go out and be very casual and making jokes with everyone and so on. It's just that during meeting, he's like that. So expression of anger to him is something that is, I would say, completely professional. It is not something that extends beyond the meeting room, nothing beyond that. So that is something that you maybe need to understand when you are dealing with, especially if you're working with multinational companies where you have foreigners working together with you, people from different culture who feel that it's good always to be straightforward, especially when it comes to discussing any organizational matters or matters that reflects or things that relates to the work. So they would be very blunt, very straightforward. And it's okay because it's about getting the job done. It's not about being personal. But for us in Malaysia, sometimes that can be dragged into something personal. I've, have enough experience observing, even among senior professors, not here and some other places. During discussions, the debate was very heated, very to get to the point of even like calling names against each other. And as a result of that, these people who were arguing in this meeting, they will not be talking to each other for the next few months. All right, so that I think is dragging things a bit too far, right? So the so-called Western way, in a way, when it comes to dealing with this, to me, is arguably better because you raise your point, if you have to express some level of anger and dissatisfaction about something, you express that, but straight to the point or only focusing on the point, not to take it personally and not to take it beyond the meeting room. So I think that is something that depends on the situation that you are in. So if you are, and some of us, if you come across a situation where you have to, and you see someone expressing their anger towards you, or you yourself see others doing that to others, understand the context of it, right? Some people are comfortable doing that, but some people maybe not so much. But you yourself, maybe we need to find a good middle way on how to do it, right? Should I anticipate different attitudes towards addressing difficult issues? Difficult over here, I think, is argumentative. Could refer to similar what we talked about just now, sensitive issues and some personal issues. Do I know what sort of feedback is acceptable? Now, again, over here, that relates to the first point that we see here in this list. The kind of feedback that we hear, do we welcome feedback? Now, again, we are our culture over here, collectivistic. It's about saving face and things like that. Sometimes we don't quite like hearing negative feedback. We get very uncomfortable with it to the point that we avoid hearing these negative feedback. So from a cultural, situational point of view, maybe it's something good. So you avoid people from having negative kind of discussions or arguments and so on. But from the organizational side, that cannot be something right now. So when we talk about, if we were to expand this in the context of organizational behavior or in industrial psychology and so on, the argument is more towards that you should welcome negative feedback, but of course, create an environment where these negative feedback can be given in such a way that is constructive, positive, and it is something that eventually can affect the company or the organization in a positive way, right? Sometimes being right is not the correct situation. Okay, that is an interesting point to be made. Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in. I'm sure all of us may have certain opinions about many things. in respect to our own organization. But then how you actually communicate that, I think that is something that we need to learn also, to be respectful and to go with the system. But at the same time, if you were to imagine yourself, now again, before I come into that point, what I normally like to say to myself, and also I like to say to others who are working under me, is that, you know, certain things you can't change because it's part of the organizational culture, so to speak, but you always need to, but you can always tell to yourself that, you know, if I get into certain positions or in the way that I do things, you yourself, you can change yourself in a way that you would invite, you know, as much as possible, feedback from anyone, and you are willing to listen. It's not easy. It's actually not something that not just anyone can take. You know, taking negative criticism requires some toughness in terms of your inner self. That's why some people like to just simply avoid having that, avoid conflict at all costs. But you do that at all costs to avoid you yourself being uncomfortable, but it could be at the expense of the company or the expense of the organization in terms of doing things better. So, but again, I just would like to come to the conclusion that, you know, find a way that you can relate or relay your point in such a way that is constructive, respectful, according to the framework or the mechanism that is embedded in your respective organization, department, and so on. But what would be bad definitely is you vent out to others and you create this toxic kind of environment in the organization or in the department. That should not be tolerated at all. All right, that is something that is, you know, going to not benefit anyone, not you, not the organization, and it's not going, and it's actually going to affect in a negative way, definitely. All right. Now, when it comes to meeting someone or when you go to a certain country, maybe what are the topics that you should avoid when it comes to conversations? You know, small talks, right? When we meet someone, you engage into some kind of small talk or, you know, brief conversation about general issues before you come to the bread and butter or the most serious issues. What kind of topics that you should avoid talking about? All right, I have some reference over here. Right, this is more in terms of from a society, country point of view. If you go to Japan, don't go on and talk about World War II. If you go to like countries like in the Middle East, don't talk about their political system, about democracy and things like that. If you come to Malaysia, don't talk about, now we talk about the 3 R's, religion, royalty, and race. Don't bring up issues that relates to these 3 things, especially from a critical point of view, because open conversation about these 3 issues is not welcome. It's not something which is really encouraged. You can have constructive discussion from a more academic point of view, but not to the point that you are discussing this straight away from a critical point of view, arguing about this and that, or using this for your own personal purpose. Yeah, political differences, true. I think in general, here in Malaysia now, especially, I can't say, right? Maybe it's so much about others, but when it comes to my circle of friends or amongst my circle or the group, WhatsApp groups I'm part of, and these are my classmates, my former colleagues and things like that, who are mostly Malays. Right? So discussion about politics is the one that is going to make us, you know, argue against each other. So to the point that in many of my WhatsApp groups I'm in now, the admin will straight away say, you know, let's not talk about politics because it's just going to be something that we are going to talk to each other in a very negative, angry manner, and it's not going to be good. Let's just talk about something else. You want to talk about politics, you get into your WhatsApp group for political discussions, and you can discuss over that. Yes, in Thailand, you shouldn't be talking about the royal family. It's not something that is advisable. So if you're coming over there to Thailand and you want to engage into some kind of small talk with your friends or your associate in Thailand, don't suddenly talk about the royal family or criticize the king or the queen or the behavior of the king and anything like that. Don't do that. Masuk jail terus ke? Not really sure. Probably, yes. Yeah, I think it is something actually in the law over there that you cannot openly criticize the royal family. Yeah, don't do that. Okay. Anything else? Anyone knows any examples of topics that you should avoid when you talk to someone? I know, for example, when you yeah, in Sweden is the issue in terms of how you in terms of parental strategy, especially when it comes to the use of corporal punishment or physical punishment in general. So we actually do we did have a rather high profile case of a Malaysian parent in living in Sweden, and one of the children was not necessarily beaten, but was subjected to some kind of physical punishment by the father at home. So she went on to reveal this to the counselor at the school, and the counselor made a report to the authorities, and the authorities actually went on to send the police and detain the father as a result. So that is something that we need to be.
Father and mother, exactly.
Both,
Father
both
and
father.
mother. Yeah, the father got 6 months. I think the father got the mother got 6 months. I think the father got a bit less, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we need to respect the country that we are in. We can't, when you know that you're living in a country where the majority of the people over there officially they have a system and law that they have put in place. So you need to respect that. But at the same time, Muslim parents, I understand, not Muslim parents only, but just Asian parents in general, we feel strongly about certain things, especially when it comes to parenting strategies, parental behavior, and so on. So in how do you in a way harmonize that or to make things comfortable for everyone? Make sure always, I always like to say this, and I remind myself also, when it comes to the way that you deal with your children or students also to a certain extent, make sure that you establish that genuine level of open communication and trust. Right, so even if you have to at times punish them for certain things, make sure they understand why the punishment is being given. Why is it that this punishment is, the reason or justification for it, so that it's not going to lead to anything which is bad for you or for anyone. Definitely things have changed. I often like to use this example. My late grandfather was a headmaster in a Sekolah Melayu, a Malay school back in the past in the 1940s and so on. So some of the legendary stories I've heard about him when he was a headmaster in a school, the way that he used to physically, rotan and cane someone and slap someone, I've heard stories, and whenever I go balik kampung, I will hear stories about that, about how my grandfather was a legend as a teacher in that way. But you can't be like that anymore, right? Because times have changed, and I think for good reasons. We ought to be, not to say better, the word better seems to be very judgmental. We ought to be thinking about different ways when it comes to parental strategies and parental, and how we discipline our children, if that is the key factor or goal that you would like to have, right? So yes, I think you can find also some examples of jokes that people make about parental strategies between different culture. I can't remember the name of this Indian lady. She's married. She's from India. She's married to her husband is from Sweden. So she makes this jokes also, stand-up comedy performances where he make reference to the differences that we have in terms of how we our parental strategy between myself from India and also my husband from Sweden. So my husband from Sweden, his way of instilling discipline to the children is, you're not behaving yourself, go to your room, you're grounded, or go and you cannot use your phone and play with your Lego and things like that. But of course, Asian parents, we may have a different approach to that, and we have reasons for that also. But make sure that you understand the context and the situation that you are in. Whichever the case, think about what is the best option, and think about alternative options also in terms of how you deal with different situations. Okay. All right. I was thinking about one example just now about topics to avoid. now I forgot. It's okay. Maybe it comes back to me. How it's not here. I can write it over here. Right. Yeah. What was it again? Yeah, it's okay lah. Until if it comes back to me, I'll share with you. Right. So the rest of the checklist over here, should I? This is the same thing. Bad jokes. Criticism, anger, feedback. All right. Things to avoid. Saving face. All right. So I think the rest of this, I think we will look into some specific examples later on. Now coming to this, at the end of this small section on a cross-cultural checklist, the key strategies for effective cross-cultural communication, there are three main factors as ascertained by various academic research. These three factors are perception, curiosity, and there is another one, but that last one we will, that last point on that last strategy, we will come to the conclusion later on. All right. Now we move on now to this, which is on cross-cultural issues and challenges in reference to non-verbal communication style. All right, so let's take a break for about 10 minutes. And while taking that break, please do this. Right, take this test called Social Intelligence Test and tell me what is the score that you get, right? This is to measure your SQ or Social Intelligence Quotient. Now, there are different types of intelligence now, and scholars in psychology like to say there's general intelligence, but also like emotional intelligence and social intelligence. And there are also theories about multiple intelligences. So this is one that reflects or relate to more specifically the issue that we are discussing today, cross-cultural communication. So this is about social intelligence. So please try and take this. So we'll take a break for 10 minutes. It's now 10:29. So we'll come back at 10:40 or 10:39, 10:40. Now it's 10:30, so we'll come back at 10:40. All right, so please take this first, and once you have done it, please, if you don't mind, just share your score at the chat section so that we can see how do we score for this particular test, and then also we can reflect upon and even maybe criticize about the whole test and the whole exercise, the whole purpose, and the whole, questions and so on. We can definitely do that. All right, so I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. Oh, sorry, hilang pula. Okay, so far only Miss Tan 82%. Very good actually, scored very high. How about the others? 71. Don't worry, if your score is very low, it's fine. I remember when I took this test for the first time, my score was, I think, below 50% because I'm probably someone who is overthinking too much. I like to, sometimes I think it's a different thing or it's a different layer to the facial expression and so on. So I didn't get this right. Score was very low. So if your score is anything around 70% and above, I think it's very, very good. But again, I'll come to some other feedback or overall feedback about this later on. Let's wait for another 2 minutes. The rest, if you have done it, please, if it's okay, right? Just I wouldn't force you, but it would be nice that you share your score so that we can see overall what is the pattern of scoring that we have amongst the participants here. Yeah, basically this test is asking you to somehow judge the emotions of the person based on what you can see from the eyes. Basically, the theoretical argument over here is your eyes do not lie. You can tell someone's emotion by looking into how the movement of the eyes is, the eyebrows and so on, whether it is moving towards, moving inwards together or upwards and so on. There's a meaning to that. Okay, all right, so thank you for those who have shared your marks over here. I hope the rest have tried also. If you haven't, it would be nice to try. And likewise also, if you feel that you want to try more or different types of social intelligence tests, you have quite a number of examples of free versions of the SQ tests on the internet. But I have to say, when it comes to the full SQ scale or social intelligence scale, it's much longer than this, and there are a variety of questions, and the interpretation can be very specific also according to different categories or different aspect of social intelligence skills. However, this particular, coming back to this is referring to one aspect, which is in terms of yeah, don't worry if you get a low score. It's okay. Like I said, I got a very low score also when I took this for the first time. Now, because they're asking you to judge by just looking at the eyes. Now, what is the issue about the test? Now, let's not talk about the interpretation, but what's the issue? What's your reaction to the test itself? Right? The validity of the test. Do you think the test is valid to test your social intelligence? What do you think about that?
Hi.
Yeah.
I think because it's just the eye, but if it's in a real situation, you can look the person in the face. So you tend to look at their mouth also. So it's really how you cannot really just concentrate on the eyes to just read how the facial expression. So it becomes invalid a bit. So it's just that I think the mouth will be very much more dominant. So because especially when you're just talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
So just the eye, okay, probably if you just interrogation session or anything, the people, that person is not talking, then you want to read the whole body language and everything. But if it's just the eye that you're concentrating, so it kind of like feel invalid.
Yeah, I think that's a valid argument, definitely. I had the same impression also when I saw this test, but again, to be fair, to the makers or the people who constructed this test, what they have given to us, the online version is only one part of the test. The other parts of the test would cover also situational things in paragraphs, and also I think full face expressions also. It's part of the test also, but this is just one part of it. All right, so in terms of looking at the eyes also, other than what was mentioned just now, is the fact that these eyes that you saw, they are most likely from one particular culture only, isn't it? Like these are white Caucasian people, maybe one or two exceptions. but mostly these are white people or white Caucasians people. So here's where again you come to the issue of whether facial expressions of emotion is something universal or not. Now, we are not looking into nonverbal communication. So nonverbal communication is arguably much more revealing or contains much more rich information in terms of our communication aspect when it comes to, you know, human communication overall. So it's good for us to know, especially when it comes to, again, the do's and don'ts, so that we do not make mistakes, as in now do something that embarrass ourselves or embarrass the people that we represent, organization that we represent, and so on. But coming back to the test just now, this particular test refers to a theory or a research area in psychology and human emotions, basically, and studies on human emotions under psychology about facial expressions of emotions. The question is facial expressions of emotions universal? Right, so basically what this question is asking you is, when you look into the faces of the people over here, do you know what kind of emotions that they have? How about this one, the first one over here? What emotion is this person having? Right. If I were to label this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, can anyone maybe put down what is the emotion these people are having? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What are the emotions that you think that these people are having? Just by looking at their faces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anyone? You guys are here or not?
Yes.
Yeah, 5 is happy. I think that's very easy. 6 is sad. Yeah. How about the one on top? 1, 2, 3. I see a full answer over here. Angry, surprised, irritating, confused, happy, and sad. I think happy and sad should be very clear. Number 1, is it angry or is it annoyed? Yeah, I think that is something that is not necessarily universally understood, isn't it? Doubtful. Yeah, I think that's interesting, Penny. Doubtful, surprised, disgusted. And this one's surprised also. And then, okay, sorry. Now, this whole research that we have, right, or this body of research that we have on facial expressions of emotion is actually something that you can see has been done for decades. And the primary or the overall conclusion is, scholars have argued, or psychologists have argued, that facial expressions of emotion is something universal. Means that the movements of the eyes, or movements of the cheek, movements of your lips, for specific emotions is pretty standard for anyone, regardless of which cultural background, skin color also, and things like that. Because how elaborate that they have done this research was that to the point that they went to a remote island somewhere in the Pacific, and they test the people over there also in terms of how they would look like when they are sad, happy, and so on. So the researchers argued that it's the same. Right, these people are detached from, you know, the popular culture environment, because if you were to ask people like us, the argument people would give is, we look the same in terms of our facial expression of emotion because we learn the same thing. We are exposed to the same kind of information. So there's a learning process over there. It's not something nature, something that's not something instinctive or natural. So you go to this remote island to test that hypothesis, that this is not because of learning environment or learning experiences. These people are traditional. They have their own traditional, isolated kind of, you know, lifestyle. So they are detached from all the environment that we all have, or the exposure that we all have. So test whether they have the same facial expressions of emotion or not. So you can find that these studies, they have done videos and documentaries about this. So the person, the name of the researcher is Ekman, E-K-M-A-N. You can look into the various studies and references about him. So he argued that facial expressions of emotion is universal. It looks the same. Happy, sad, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. This is, but I think it's not the same order, not the same. Sorry. I think this is definitely, let me see into examples over here. This one is definitely sad. This is happy. This is surprised. Yes, I think this is disgusted. True. This is fear. This is annoyed, or this is disgusted. This is fear. And this one is surprise. What was that? Irritated, probably. I don't have the answer or the reference over here, but this is a different picture. Happy, sad, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. If you were to read further the references over here, they would describe you specifically. They call it the facial physiognomy, right? The specific aspect of your facial muscles and features on your face, the movements of it, they say is universal. If you are having the emotion fear, right, your eyebrows will move up like that, your eyes will be larger, widen, and then your cheek muscles will move in a certain way and so on. This is also part of the training. If anyone goes for professional acting lessons, they will teach you also how to manipulate and move your facial muscles in order to reflect a certain emotions in a certain genuine way. Now, but what I have sometimes, my point of view, and this is open for debate. Some of you may have, you are free to agree or disagree with me. What I find sometimes about this issue, when it comes to certain cultures, especially our culture over here, we are more reserved, a bit more collectivistic. We are careful about issues about dignity, about saving face and things like that. There is a lot of things that are hidden. That includes also when it comes to emotional expressions. That the point I'm making is that there are some people, or there are many people, who try to hide their emotions, and they are able to do so very well, because that is the exposure that we have. Right? We do not necessarily part of a culture where expressions of emotions is totally or openly encouraged. You try to contain that, at least to a certain extent. And in some situations, even we are expected to hide them because we don't want to, come to that point of shame and things like that, and saving face, and issues along that line. So so I feel that when it comes to judging someone or making interpretation about someone based on his or her facial expression for a collectivistic culture like Malaysia is very tricky. Sometimes you can get tricked also, thinking to the opposite and thinking to the contrary. So, and that is something that I've not really followed that very much or very, very consistently in terms of the development of research about this, but I've seen enough, right? A couple of examples of people who have criticized or began to question the validity of the original research done by Ekman, the argument or the hypothesis that facial expressions of emotion is something universal, because there's a lot of question now about whether or not this is something that some people genuinely can hide and can portray the emotions in a different way according to their own ability. So that is something that I feel we can be discussed much greater from a different point of view. But final point about facial expression I would like to say is this. Being a student of psychology, or in the past, especially if I were to introduce myself, I'm a teacher in psychology or I study psychology, the reaction that I get a lot of times that, oh, you can read our mind, right? You see my face, you can know what I'm doing or what I'm thinking about. Is it true or not? When you study psychology, you can read people's mind, or you can know the personality of this person just by looking at this or that, just by looking at him or her. Can you? Are psychologists like that? Not necessarily. The answer is totally no. No one can actually read someone like a book. I know there are some popular books out there that argues or put the title of the book also, How to Read Someone Like a Book. No lah, right? I think if there is anyone who claims or run some kind of workshop and say that I can train you so that you are able to read someone for a book, most likely that's a scam. No such thing, right? Of course, we qualify things more from the point of view of academic research, so we look into probability. Right. So yes, some people maybe because of training and exposure, they become much more competent when it comes to understanding or empathizing with others. They can empathize and realize that better, but not to the point that you can actually read someone like a book. I think that is really overstating it. An exaggeration that ought not to be part of any marketing kind of strategy because it's just not true. Okay, now moving on to some other examples of nonverbal cues or nonverbal communication examples. So let's look into this. Gestures, thumbs up, right? I think over here in Malaysia, this is okay, thumbs up, but we ought to know or realize that in some cultures, this is not. Sorry, the writing over there is pretty small because I took it from a reference online. In most countries, yes, this is okay, an indicator of good job, job well done, or that's great, and things like that. However, when it is used in countries like Australia, Greece, and the Middle East, basically means, that thing, and also, yeah, not so nice, basically. Now, I did run through this with our Australian students, and they were telling me that this is not necessarily something universal in Australia. In some places or in some situations, yes, it can be a sign of like insult or something that is negative if you were to put this in such a way. So again, over here, as a way to, in a way, educate ourselves, whenever you come across any website that gives you information like this is okay in Malaysia, this is okay in America, not okay in Australia, not okay in this country, take it with a pinch of salt. Now, these are overall summary conclusions, not to say that everyone over there is like this. Everyone thinks the same way. No such thing, right? So we all live, we live in a society, or human beings in general, we have individual differences. Not just in terms of our own, in a country, but also in our own local community, our family units, and so on. So there are varieties in terms of how we actually look at things. So when it comes to this is overall suggestion or overall conclusion. So it's a good thing for us to educate ourselves so that we probably want to avoid doing this, but don't just simply assume that everyone thinks the same way and every single person thinks the same way. All right, so this is the first example, thumbs up. This one is peace. There's a difference between peace if your palm is pointing outside or your palm is pointing inwards. Which one is the one that is considered to be offensive? Inward, outward like that is okay. That's the peace sign that you normally find, or arguably you can say was popularized during the hippie culture back in the 70s, 80s. Peace, or give peace a chance. But if you do it the way that the picture you see over there, Winston Churchill, that actually means something else. It's not peace. It's again something that, similar to like up yours, but there is a historical context to that, right? And it's interesting trivia information. This was supposedly something that relates to the events of the past, 200 to 300 years ago, when there was like ongoing war or occasional war between the French and the English. And during this time, one of the primary weapon that was used is bow and arrow. So when you, in order to operate or use the bow and arrow, you need your fingers. So supposedly, according to one reference or some references I found, stated that in the past, when you have prisoners of wars, and then amongst these prisoners, these are archers. So in a way, one of the way for you to disable these archers from potentially, going against you in the future, you would cut their fingers so that they would not be able to operate or use the bow and arrow anymore. Right, so it's a brutal kind of strategy, definitely something that hopefully is not used anymore. So you cut their fingers so they are not able to use they will not be able to become archers anymore. As a response to that, right? So according to some narration, in some of these war situation that was happening, whenever they win a battle, so as a way to show that we are still here, I'm still able to attack you, you would show your fingers to them like that, so that I still have my fingers, I can still become the archer, I can still, kill you, and something along that line. So it's a sign of determination, in a way, like objection towards your enemy, right? An insult also to a certain extent. You do it in such a way. So that's the historical narrative behind that particular sign. But definitely when it comes to what we know today, right, it's okay in most places for you to do the peace sign outwards, because it's a part of popular culture, but don't do it reverse. It's pointing towards your palm is pointing towards you. Okay. Yeah. Am I? Sorry. Peace is like this, outwards.
Sorry,
Nice.
what I meant is actually it's just between a flip of the hand gesture. It's just the same. One is symbolizing peace, and the other one is just basically the other one. You can still attack.
Yeah, so it's something interesting, just some things just manipulate in a different way, it means something totally different, right? All right, how about this one? This one is also, I think over here in Malaysia, we do this a lot when we send WhatsApp, we send, you don't want to type OK, you just use this OK sign. But again, this is not necessarily universal. I do know, this is something that I know personally, in the Middle East, yes, in some countries, I can't say overall, but in some countries in the Middle East, or for many Arab people, this is actually a sign of insult. It's like the telling you off. The point or information given over there is that in some Middle Eastern countries, such as Kuwait, the OK sign signifies the evil eye, something that reflects bad omen or bad energy. So you want to go away. So that is something that you need to be very careful about. Probably, right, for some of us over here in UOW now, we have our counterparts and colleagues in UOW Dubai. So if you were to communicate with colleagues from UOW Dubai, you want to say okay to something, don't use this. Okay, so we don't want something unnecessary in terms of misunderstanding happening. So just write okay to be on the safe side, especially when it comes to using emojis and emoticons. If you're not clear about exactly what it means, don't use them. Write properly, right? Yeah, write using proper words. That would be something that, I think it's an advice that all of us can agree upon. How about this one? Stop sign. It doesn't seem to be something which is so offensive, isn't it? It's just a stop sign. It's stop. But avoid using in Greece. Why? Again, there's a historical context to this. In Greece, in ancient Greece also, right, coming back as far as during that time, when you put your palms up, all 5 fingers showing, that's a sign of protest, or a sign of, showing your anger or displeasure about something, especially towards a politician or the government, right? So it's a sign of protest if we actually do this. So they still have this over there in Greece. Whenever there is a massive public rally or demonstration, you will have people doing that as a sign of, go away, right, or step down. So it symbolizes something like that. And when it comes to ancient Greece also, those of you who are familiar with the movie Gladiator, do you remember or not? And whenever a gladiator event or battle is over, and you have one person standing that survives, what happens? What did the crowd do? Anyone remember or not? What was the hand signal that was used? All right, so if anyone maybe you have not seen that movie yet, The Gladiator, you will see, right? And this actually reflects what they have done, their homework in terms of the practice during that time. So whenever one gladiator, the one that survived, right, so the crowd or the emperor would actually have to make the decision whether or not this gladiator survive or needs to be killed. All right, so the sign for save or don't kill the gladiator, so it's the thumbs up sign. So that is live, live, live. So you will find a very memorable scene in the movie The Gladiator, Russell Crowe, back, I don't know, 20 years ago. So he was the one that survived, or his group of gladiators, the one that survived the battle. Right, so the crowd stood up and say, live, live, live. So it's a sign that, don't kill these people. They are great warriors. We need to respect them. Or in other words, also they can say we want to see them in action again. But if the emperor were to say kill, so this to give the signal, you need to execute these gladiators to the Roman army. No, this is not in Greece, Romans, right? So you actually put thumbs down. So not ancient Greece. Okay, that's the Roman army. But again, just like to show an example of historical context when it comes to the use of thumbs up and thumbs down. This one is a more recent one. Okay, this is rock on. Is this something okay or not? Yeah, the writing over here is pretty small, but I hope you can see this because this is something interesting. The symbol for rockers, rock on, is something that, maybe something universally amongst fans of rock and roll. This is something okay, but in some countries, as stated over here, Spain, Italy, and Greece, it is used to signify that your wife is sleeping with someone else. I do not know exactly how valid this is, but the context I've seen, a more specific context of this I've seen in a Spanish movie that I saw before, and it was not just like this. Actually, it was like actually more like a kind of telephone ringing, talking kind of hand gesture like that. Means that you're in a way that you're indicating that your wife is not loyal to you, is not faithful to you. She is talking to someone or seeing someone. So it's more like that. But again, right, so you know about this already. So you were to go to any of these countries in Southern Europe, Spain, Italy, and Greece, perhaps would be wise not to actually use it. These are other examples, right, that you can refer to. Also, there are many other examples that you can see from various references and resources from the internet. Chain, and then of course the finger thing over here. Right, these are some of the references that I've looked through just now. So moving on from gestures, this is something interesting. Paralinguistics, tone of voice. This is something that I feel, my observation, of course, feel free to disagree. I feel for some of us, like Malay people, we tend to be not so sensitive about this. Why? Why do I say this? Because some languages like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, they are tonal language. So because of that, the use of certain tones and pitch is something that to them is very sensitive. But for us Malaysian, well, for us Malay people, sometimes the tone that we use, we tend to neglect the importance of it, or in terms of the possibility that it can be understood in a different way if you to say something according to a certain different tone, right? So that is just my general observation. It's difficult for me to also give any specific example. I mean, it's like the way that you call someone, right? Mat, when you call someone, oh, Mamat, oh, Mina, so that kind of thing, tone like that. So the tone reflects certain meaning that you may not want to use, especially when it comes to certain people or in certain specific occasion. Now, this is an interesting example about how we demonstrate paralinguistics in terms of how the same sentence, when you say it in a different specific emphasis of tone in specific location, it carries different denotations or some kind of different meaning. All right. So the sentence is, I can't wait to see her. So that is just in general. So let's now try to say this. You can practice on your own. Let me try myself and see whether I can illustrate this on my part. Now, if you were to emphasize on the letter I can't wait to see her. So that sounds more like excitement, or you are excited to meet this person. So it's something positive, something which is okay. Now, emphasize on the word can't. I can't wait to see her. Right? So it sounds a bit more sarcastic, like, the literal meaning is, I can't wait to see her. But because you emphasize on the word can't, you are actually in a way saying, or the meaning is actually the other way around. I don't really want to see her, but you know, saying it in a sarcastic way, I can't wait to see her. When you emphasize the word can't, gives you that particular meaning. Last one, emphasize on the word her. This is a bit, you know, not spooky. It's not nice, right? So you say something like, I can't wait to see her. So that sounds a bit mischievous, to the point of, you know, maybe there is some kind of sexual undertone also to it. So it's not, so the meaning change because of the way you say it. So these are the things that, you know, having said all of this and giving this example and so on, I also would like to caution all of us that we do not take this fully, as in that universal, everyone who says like that with that tone means like that, because you have to also factor in what we referred to just now in the example I mentioned, local accent. Right, some certain local accent, the tone is like that, and the meaning actually is not in any way sarcastic or mischievous or sexual. It's just that's the way they talk. Any one of you who may have met someone who is a native Scottish person or Irish person, you would realize how difficult it is to actually understand what they say, because the tone that they use is very high and very low, and for certain words and certain expressions. And that's just the way they speak. It's not that they are angry or they are sarcastic or anything like that. That's just the way they are. So likewise also, I think for many of us or some of us who may have had the opportunity of interacting with our colleagues or people who have visited our campuses from Australia, it can be difficult maybe on certain points, certain things that they say, because the tone that they use very different or different compared to how we normally say certain words. So always best what you do is you try to familiar yourself with the tone and accent, and then try to delay reaction, especially if you're not sure about what exactly this person means, and ask for clarification. Don't be afraid or embarrassed to do so. I think it's fine, but say it in a nice way, like come again, can you please repeat that, can you say it again? So say it in a nice way, not to say in such a way that I don't understand your accent. Right? So that is, again, coming to some kind of racial, some kind of stereotypic, prejudicial kind of statement. So, be just neutral in the sense that you're asking for clarification. So that should be okay. Now, of course, we live in Malaysia, where when people come to Malaysia, they get very confused also because of the way we speak English, isn't it? Look at this. You got by people or not? Right? The uncle there say got no more already. So that is something that maybe we are used to it. And sometimes, some of us may make the mistake that we assume everyone talks in that way, everyone understands talking in that way. But I can tell you in my experience dealing with, because I used to teach the MPU subject for international students here in KDU. So they take the subject called Pengajian Malaysia 3 or Malaysian Studies 3. So this is one topic of discussion that a lot of international students would give me their feedback. They say, the first few months when we came here, it's really difficult to understand, right? The way that people here speak English, because they use certain words that are confusing, and the tone is also different. And then they also we will put in some colloquial terms, local words, Malay words, Indian words, Chinese word in the English conversation or English language expression that we do. So that is something that, some, of course, among scholars, and more prominently, previously, the former Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, used to criticize Singaporeans at that generation, the younger generations, and they have lost their ability to speak proper English. I think definitely he has a point. We ought to respect that, but at the same time, it's a nice cultural practice that we have over here, that this is the way that we speak. There's nothing that is wrong about that essentially, but we need to know the occasions on where speaking like this is okay and when to switch off and speak in a more formal kind of tone during certain events. Right? So you shouldn't be talking always like this anytime, anywhere. Know your place, know know the occasion, know the crowd, right? Respect, the environment that you are in, so that your message can come through, and also you, in a way of treating everyone with respect, right? Yeah, this kind of thing lah, sold out, right? What matcha you want to tampao or makan here? Yeah, so that is like a combination of Indian words. Matcha, tapao Chinese, makan is Malay. So imagine how confusing that is if you were to have a foreign friend, right? So it's, what are you talking about, right? Finished already and sold out. So yeah, what are other examples of expressions? Like, like the way we Chinese people are, especially, they say the way they say can, the many variations that you say can la, can lo, can me. That one is, can be quite confusing, right? For if not used to it, isn't it? But again, right, it's part of the unique cultural aspect that we have amongst people over here. Again, I would like to emphasize, nothing to be embarrassed about. I personally feel also there is no need for us in Malaysia to speak British English or American English. We speak English with some kind of accent. That's fine, because it reflects our cultural identity, our origins and things like that. But again, just know when to switch on and switch off, especially when it comes to using colloquial terms, Rojak language, and Manglish and things like that. If you are attending an event, students, I always say, I'm sure all of you also who are lecturers, you will emphasize to your students when you are doing presentations, speak formal English and don't mix things. Unless you really cannot find the words, then you can mix. But then as best as possible, don't do that, because it's part of the training and practice, because we don't want to have our students graduating and they go on and work anywhere in an organization and they just speak like that throughout. And that's not going to be something good, not just for the student, but also not good when it comes to the image of ourselves as an institution in terms of how we prepare and train our students. All right, now body language and posture. Now, in terms of reading someone, learn to read and influence people through nonverbal communication. Again, I would like to caution that this is something that you can take it as some kind of suggestion of skills that you can improve in terms of how you react, body posture, whether you put your hands, around like this or behind your back and things like that. I feel sometimes people take this too seriously to the point that they feel that they have to act in a certain way if they want to create certain impression or for impression management. I don't like that idea, to be honest, because that seems to argue or to pave the way of thinking that all of us are social actors. We need to act in a certain way. As much as possible, I like that all of us remain spontaneous also, retain at least some level of spontaneity in terms of our reactions, our natural kind of instinctive reaction. But then, of course, again, comes to the point that we do not want to make people uncomfortable. Okay, that's one extreme, of course. But to the other extreme, we don't want also that we are teaching people to become social chameleons. Social actors, we act in a certain way and we are not being genuine. And we're not honest in terms of what we are trying to portray. So that's not going to be good also. So I do understand, I realize that in the real world, sometimes maybe people like to emphasize this is what you need to do, this is what you need to say and things like that. But above all of that, as a teacher, I believe I ought to stand more to the idealistic point of view that be honest, be genuine in terms of expressing your feelings and so on. Your body posture, in a way, is something that is instinctive, right? Whether or not you are portraying confidence or lack of confidence or anxiety and so on, to be very honest, it's actually something which comes out naturally. Yes, you can maybe train yourself to act in a certain way, contain yourself in a certain way, and not react in a certain way. But again, you are probably not being honest to yourself. right? So the best way, if you want to deal with any situation confidently, is make yourself confident, make yourself ready, right? Prepare for the situation, prepare for the occasion, prepare for the presentation, know your homework, and done the research. That's how you do it. Your reaction later on will be something that comes out naturally. If you are confident with what you have done, then it's okay. Portraying confidence just for the sake of confidence, even though you don't know anything, that's not something that I wish to inculcate or to promote in any way. Because I think, again, like I said, it's like, asking people or training people to become social actors. And that's not something that I'm interested to focus on. But yeah, these are things that when it comes to doing certain things that perhaps may create a certain awkward situation or making people uncomfortable, it's okay for you to know, like touching, right? Communication that emphasizes empathy and sympathy, power, handshake, and so on. I think these are good for us to know. Now, these are two primary examples in terms of touching. Touching someone's lap. Is it okay over here if someone like a male colleague suddenly touches your lap, a female person, is it something okay? I think no lah. Over here in Malaysia, if that is something done, what would you do? Now, when it comes to your boss standing behind you and putting his hands on your shoulder, is that okay or not? Shoulder is okay. I guess it depends also on how the nature of the touch, isn't it? Right? If it's, you can understand it's something friendly, then it's okay. But if it's like touching to the point of massaging, then maybe no lah, isn't it? But definitely over here in Malaysia, in schools these days, teachers are being trained in such a way that you don't touch your students in this way, because it can create this misunderstanding, even though maybe you don't mean anything negative or anything which is mischievous or anything along that line, but we just don't want to create that situation of misunderstanding. Yeah, I think most people, I think for most of us over here, Asian culture, we are not comfortable when it comes to touching in this way. But again, like some of us say, it depends on who the person is. If it's someone that you consider to be a close colleague, many years of working together and so on, maybe it's fine. Yeah, sure. And that's true. Calling someone dear, that is, I think, now people tend to take this lightly. They think it's okay. They may argue like, my teachers or my boss used to call me like that, dear, and so on. I can call you dear also. What's wrong? Or sweetheart and things like that. I mean, worse would be like call you things like sexy and things, words along that line. You shouldn't lie, so you should avoid doing that. Again, it's about you may have no bad intentions whatsoever. It's just a friendly kind of expression, or greeting, dear, sweetheart. But again, it's not going to be something nice, because easily it can be misunderstood to be something else. Now, I probably don't want to say that it is totally coming into sexual harassment, even though maybe someone with a more legal background can argue against this. But I guess but I like to think when it comes to situation like this, it is sufficient for you to explain. Can you please not touch me? Is it okay that you try to clarify and mention to the person, I prefer not to do that, or I prefer you not to call me sweetheart. Just say that in a nice way. I think it should be okay. Of course, I need to qualify that. I do know also, perhaps some of you may have personal experiences where when you try to say something like that, it backfires against you. If that's really the case, and the person that is involved over here is of that kind of temperament and personality, then what will be best? You just simply avoid having or being in that kind of situation. We do sometimes, over here also, occasionally when it comes to meetings, we try to be less casual, so we make jokes about each other, sometimes also sharing certain things that are bothering, or even touching sexual innuendos and so on. Because it's just, from a certain point of view, it's just banter, some kind of banter, interaction, casual interaction between colleagues and friends. But again, I think it's something that we ought to, as best as possible, avoid. maybe at best, minimize. If you can't totally avoid, minimize that, because you just do not want to expose yourself to a situation where misunderstanding can happen. Okay, because that is, I think, part of common sense that we all ought to respect, because not everyone think exactly the same way. Now we have some real examples of touching or movements that was really uncomfortable. These are two examples of very prominent world leaders. One is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the current American president. Before he became the president, or during the campaign itself, this was actually one of the things that his opponents were exploiting to criticize Joe Biden. He has this, or he had, now he says, I don't do this anymore. I realized I was wrong. So he had this kind of tendency before, when he was trying to be cordial and friendly to anyone, and female staff especially. He would go behind them and then massage their shoulder, holding them to the shoulder like that, and talking to them also in such a way that is very near. So it's definitely not comfortable. And when you see in a picture like this, it looks rather creepy, isn't it? So it's good that people have given him this feedback, and he has acknowledged that I was wrong to do this. I won't do this anymore. I need to respect people's, individuals' personal space. So I think that is something that we ought to take note also. If you have done any of that, any of the things that we have discussed now, and we know now that it's not something nice to do, just stop doing it. And just remind yourself, maybe I've done that before. Now it's time for me maybe to change. Now, in the case of Donald Trump over here, this was the case when he was during his election year, when he won actually against Hillary Clinton. So during one of the debates that was ongoing at that time during the campaign period. So during this particular session, this was a town hall debate session, right? So each one of the candidate will be answering questions from the members of the audience, and the other one will be there also. But Donald Trump, as a way of trying to intimidate Hillary Clinton, whenever Hillary Clinton was talking, using a microphone and walking around and trying to engage, at least making eye contact with the members of the audience, Donald Trump would actually follow her, right? Walking behind her, which was totally unnecessary. In fact, it's something which is really uncalled for, and something which is, totally, wrong. Because the way it's supposed to be done is that when the person who is holding the mic answering the question, you are the other candidate, you should just sit down, right, and wait for your turn. There's a chair given to you, sit down over there, wait for your turn. But he just, in a way, wanted to impose himself and wanted to look intimidating. And so he actually followed her, walking around the whole room. So that's not something to be done. There is an argument that can be made when it comes to presentation style. Some of us maybe who grew up in the time 20, 30 years ago when we studied in university, when we talk about public speaking, they say, our lecturers used to say, when you speak, you should remain, on the stage, or remain, stationary more or less, so make only small movements or small steps on the stage. But now, of course, things have changed a bit. There is also something we have to acknowledge. If you see, for example, the examples of, TED Talks events, right? The speakers, some of them, of course, would be more traditional, right? Standing on the stage, making only small steps, but there are others who will be walking around, looking everywhere, looking downwards, upwards, and so on. So things have changed maybe when it comes to that point, that it's no longer necessarily that always you have to be stationary or only making small steps. Only you can walk around. But again, this is something that I believe you ought to look into things from a case-to-case basis. What is the audience that you are having? What is the setting? If you have, for example, the setting when you are making a public speech and it is a very formal audience with VIPs and so on, probably not wise for you to, when you're answering question or you're making a speech, you walk around the stage. Should remain in one area, right? But you can walk around the stage if you are engaging or talking about something which is a bit more informal, or the audience also are not necessarily in a very formal kind of setting. There is more interaction, so it's okay for you to walk around. So again, it's about doing some homework in terms of analyzing your audience, one, and also analyzing the setting, the venue, and the place where you are actually doing the event or the public speaking situation. This is something very common in Malaysia now also amongst Muslim female adults especially, right? They feel uncomfortable when it comes to shaking hands with men in general. So what they do is they would put their hand on top of their on their chest, right, like that. And it can, on occasion, create a rather awkward situation where someone is offering his hand, right, to be shaken, and the female person is not, reciprocal, is not, taking it. So this is something that if you are coming to a Muslim majority society, or even here in Malaysia also, if you will go to like government agencies, or going to, like definitely in my previous institution, the Islamic University, you need to, if you have done your homework, you would expect this already. So if you are a guy going to an event in like the Islamic University or government offices, you know already that you should not be necessarily, offering your hand for a handshake with a female officer. So you just, bow gently as a sign of respect. That's it, right? But there have been occasions when things like this happen, and the reaction from the man or someone who is not really agreeing with this whole practice, they will criticize and say this is disrespectful. The Muslim woman over here is being disrespectful to the man by not shaking his hand. So here is where I think some level of education, awareness needs to be done. On our part, I think if we know about this already, then we know that don't just immediately or automatically offer your hand for a handshake when you meet someone, right? Especially now also because of COVID, there are many people who are still quite skeptical about, touching someone's hand. So maybe in that case, or in this case, right, the pandemic is a blessing in such a way that now you actually can avoid this, and it's no longer something very common. But please understand that this is something that if you go to a Muslim country, especially, or even over here in Malaysia, to a Muslim majority kind of more conservative environment, government offices, government events, events where you have Muslim dignitaries and VIPs and so on, don't just simply offer your hand for a handshake. The other way around also, if you are a non-Muslim woman and it's a Muslim man, there is a famous photo, and I don't have it with me now, of the current Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, when she went to visit like a Muslim mosque or office in London. She extended her hand for a handshake with the Muslim Imam. So the Imam did something similar, as you can see over here. So that did not come out well when it was blasted on a newspaper. They say that the Muslim over here is being disrespectful to the future Queen of England and things like that. But again, it's about awareness. It's about creating that information to make sure that everyone understands that this is something that some people, as part of their rights in terms of their freedom of religion, in terms of how they want to practice, in terms of interaction, I think we ought to respect that. Okay. So yeah, things like this, of course, can happen. The Japanese would bow down and things like that. So I think we have seen, all of us, depiction of this on movies, documentaries, and so on. So my view always when it comes to this is whenever you go and meet someone, try to delay. What I mean is try not to be the one who make the first move. See what others are doing first, and then you react accordingly. That's my general advice now, right? If someone is bowing, then you bow. If someone is extending a hand for handshake, and then you handshake. You don't be the one that is making the first move. But what if that person also has undergone some kind of training, like here, they say they also don't want to make the first move. Then you just stare at each other, look at each other, and that's it. So I think that should be okay. All right, so that concludes my lecture on verbal communication. I hope I don't see your faces over here. I hope you guys are okay and you're not making reactions like that. All right. Okay, any questions or any comments so far, especially with regards to non-verbal communication just now? Anything you would like to add, or maybe any specific case example or situation that you would like to share? Maybe all of us can learn from. Anyone? Okay. Any examples? All right, maybe if you have, you can share on the chat. We can also read together later on. All right, so let me move on and hopefully we can finish, you know, within 1 hour, be earlier. All right, so if I were to do a more like academic presentation about cross-cultural communication, we will come to this very prominent theory that we have in organizational behavior called the Hofstede Cultural Dimension Theory, in which, according to this theoretical framework, they have analyzed different cultures around the world according to certain different cultural dimensions. And these cultural dimensions are stated over here: power distance, individualism, collectivism, uncertainty, avoidance, masculinity, femininity, long-term orientation, short-term orientation, indulgence versus restraint. So this is actually a very elaborate and extensive framework of study that has been expanded into also consultancy practices. The Hofstede group now runs a very successful consultancy program where they analyze, where they have clients amongst big organizations. They analyze their cultural competence and conduct trainings that are much more sophisticated in terms of how to build cross-cultural understanding, cultural competence, cultural knowledge, and so on. So that's not good, but we're not going to get deep into this. However, just maybe because I think all of us, almost all of us, except for maybe 1 or 2, are not Malaysians. Now, yeah, but you have been here in Malaysia for many years. All of us, we are familiar with our Malaysian culture and society over here. Now, let's try and reflect. For our Malaysian society, where do we stand? Power distance, high or low? In Malaysia, is it high or low power distance? Power distance means in terms of the relationship or interaction between those in power, high, and also those who are lower in the organization. Is it the power distance is shorter or is it longer? Is it big or is it small? Judged or evaluated mostly in terms of the communication level or communication platform or mechanism that exists. So power distance in Malaysia, high or low? What do you think? Power distance in Malaysia, yes, definitely is very high because we are still, to a certain extent, a very aristocratic kind of society, very much traditional in terms of hierarchy in the organization. So because of that, there are barriers that we have when it comes to communicating with our bosses. And that is something that we can also reflect in terms of our own organization. So it's something that maybe we can say requires, if it's for improvement to happen, it has to be done in stages. And I think in many ways, things have improved in the society, especially if you look into the current government now. There are more events and forums where the people can ask questions directly to the Prime Minister. So these are the things that can be done in order to actually, you know, lower or shorten the gap when it comes to power distance. Individualism, collectivism, which is us? Are we more individualistic or collectivistic here in Malaysia? Which one? Individualism or collectivism? Anyone? Yes, we are definitely more collectivistic because we maintain or feel very strongly about traditional values, about saving face and things like that. So yes, more collectivistic. Uncertainty avoidance. Now, what does this mean? This means that when we talk or when we, you know, communicate, are we straightforward and blunt in terms of saying things? So if we are very clear, very blunt, very straightforward, means that you don't avoid uncertainty. You want you want to avoid uncertainty, so you want to be very, very clear. However, on the other hand, it's a situation where the tendency when it comes to the way we speak and communicate or explain something, we tend to be more cryptic, more layered, more, indirect and things like that. So when it comes to this, I think over here in Malaysia, definitely we are very much, uncertainty avoidance is rather low. We are more indirect, right? Because again, it relates to the collectivistic factor just now. We are concerned about saving face. We don't want to hurt the feelings of others. We don't want to, be too blunt in terms of saying out or expressing our opinion. But that creates a problem from an organizational point of view because people are not clear exactly what you mean or what is exactly your feelings or your opinion about this issue. So when it comes to cultures that from Hofstede's point of view, organizational especially, you need to have high uncertainty avoidance so that the communication across all levels is clear. Again, this is something that we can reflect upon our own organization, our own society. Improvements can happen, and this is something that we can think about how can be done step by step. Masculinity versus femininity, which one? Which is more prominent here in Malaysia? Overall, I think, yes, we can say masculinity is still a very patriarchal kind of society. Over here in Malaysia, if you have the top positions like CEO and prime minister, ministers and so on, not easy for someone other than, the male figure for them to acquire. But I think things have changed. People are more open when it comes to having female bosses, about, allowing or opening the door for female individuals to break the glass ceiling and to acquire top positions. Whether or not it can come to the point that we can have a female prime minister over here in Malaysia, that is probably a bit difficult because I think the society remains a bit more traditional and rather conservative. So it's a bit complicated on that part. Long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. Now, yeah, I just want to cut straight to this. So studies, according to what we see from Hofstede's framework that has been done across over the years by researchers over here in Malaysia and also in other parts of the world when they do cross-cultural analysis where they include Malaysia as their subject matter. Malaysia is always categorized as short-term orientation, means that we are not that very good, according to this theory, when it comes to making long-term planning. And so we are more into finding stopgap measures, shortcut when it comes to solutions, rather than looking into what is the long-term benefits or long-term goals that we need to aspire for or aim for. True or not, I guess this is something that we can argue. Maybe for some organizations in Malaysia, we can say they are actually much more long-term oriented. So short-term orientation is rather unfair, but again, it depends on the situation itself. Indulgence versus restraint. This is, again, whether you want to be confrontational or you want to be a bit more reserved. So definitely over here in Malaysia, I believe we are a bit more reserved by our nature overall and culturally also. It's not very common. We find people who are directly confrontational in this country. Sometimes it's not nice also because a lot of things are hidden. A lot of things are contained, are being kept inside, and as a result of that, it's not being expressed. But you see the manifestation of that unhappiness and dissatisfaction coming out in different ways. In terms of nonverbal reaction, in terms of job performance, in terms of job motivation, job satisfaction, and things like that. So definitely from an organizational behavioral point of view, it's always better to actually indulge and confront the problem rather than avoiding or not tackling or restraining yourself from actually talking about it. But again, right, so one has to be balance also in terms of how we see this, right? How much we can actually change the society and the whole culture that we are used to. I think that requires some work and step by step. The power distance, we have come across this now. This is overall in terms of looking into comparison between China, Japan, and America for across all the cultural dimensions just now. So from another theoretical framework, we look also into high context culture and low context culture in terms of whether we want to be, we prefer to be more explicit in terms of the way that we talk, be clear, be direct. And on the other hand, high context culture, like over here in Malaysia, things are more internalized. There are more internalized rules, indirect, implicit, the use of silence and situations according to the environment that we are in. So because of that, the communication process becomes a bit more complicated in the sense that it's not very direct, but you would eventually find out maybe from through different means in terms of the whole message that is being put across. Suddenly we have someone who is vacuuming the office now, so I hope you guys are okay. Huh? Is the noise like bothering you? Can you hear the noise from the vacuum machine? Right. All right, that's good. But just in case, maybe let's look into this case now. Let's just read this for about 2-3 minutes, and then tell me what you think. What happened over here? Or the question is, in this case study, Sarah Marshall, in this case, she eventually lost the project. But read through the details as stated over here. Why do you think she lost the project? Okay, now this is the case about Sarah Marshall, who was heading a business development group from the US, wanted to pitch for a project in Colombia with the Colombian government, but the competing firms or the competing teams are from Spain and France. So Sarah Marshall, or Sarah over here, was very confident that she had all the facts. Her presentation was really very good. I mean, it has all the information required. And then when she presented also, the reaction was very good at first. But then she eventually lost the project to the Spanish team, even though her Colombian counterparts acknowledged the quality of her proposal was superior. Now, to be fair, we don't actually know the full details of this case, but what do you think was the turning point, or what was the deciding factor over here? All right, now the notes I have about this case study basically explains that, yeah, but then again, this is something that potentially you can raise the issue of stereotype over here. Now, look into what is the project owner or the, where is this project located in Colombian government. And finally, the one that won the project was the Spanish team. So what is the common denominator or common features between the Colombian people and the Spanish people? They are both Hispanics. So because of that, the communication part between both parties, the Spanish team and the Colombian government, was at a more maybe cordial, casual manner, more friendly, more personalized and things like that, more friendlier. So because of that, the Colombian government finally decided to give it to the Spanish team. Now, the US proposal coming from Sarah Marshall over here, even though objectively was better in terms of the specific details, specifications, and so on, but probably was not chosen in the end because they felt that there are things that are they feel more comfortable working with someone that they have more common features in this case when it comes to their native language. But what we can reflect upon this is, again, the details is not stated over there, even though in some of the other reference I have added more that what Sarah did not do was to actually mingle on a more social basis together with the representative of the Colombian government. That is to go out with them, having lunch together, wine and dine basically, and as a way to positive impression management, so to speak, and so that eventually when it comes to the decision, they would choose her team from the US, both because of the quality of the proposal and also because they are comfortable with her and her team when it comes to at a personal basis. So that was basically the weakness, as stated in the notes I have, stated that the Spanish team, they were better only when it comes to that particular part of making that individual personalized pitch, engaging in a more personal level, interacting better because of the common language that they have, and as a result, it gives them that edge. Now, this is something that in reality, or ideally, I feel it's not nice that we have situations where a decision is made not solely because of the merit of the case or the strictly the relevant factors that are involved, but it's because of something else, because of some kind of cultural matters in relation to interaction and so on. But ideally, I would like to say that it shouldn't be like this, but we know in the real world, little things like this can make a difference. So because of that, the things that we discussed just now about the do's and don'ts, about what is appropriate, not appropriate, these are possible, incidents or issues that can, flip the decision between whether you get something or you don't get something, especially when it comes to things or projects that are very competitive. It's a lot of companies that are eyeing this one particular project. So maybe when it comes to the quality of these specifications, it's more or less at the same level, especially maybe for certain companies of the same kind of standing. So the differentiator eventually would be little things like that. The cultural communication part, how much you are able to make your, the government in this case more comfortable when it comes to dealing with you, right? So they trust you more at that personal level. So building that requires some work, that requires some skills. But again, I like to always qualify this, and don't hate me for saying this. I'm rather idealistic sometimes. I always feel I don't want to encourage this. And whenever I talk about this with students, I always say, I understand in reality, you need to curry favors from people, send them gifts and things like that, go out with them, belanja diorang makan and things like that. But I don't feel like it should be part of the culture that we teach or the things that we teach you to do. But you need to be aware of that, because you are dealing with, these little things when it comes to between securing something and not securing something, between success and failure sometimes. So you need to balance things a bit. Yes, be competitive, do all of that, but not to the point that you are lying to yourself or lying to the government in this case, or to the person who is granting the project, because I think that would not be something ethical. All right, the last one over here, the next one over here is more in terms of being in, when it comes to formal and informal kind of behavior. In this case, this lawyer from Holland, a Dutch lawyer, went to Japan, went out with his colleagues, and they went out drinking in a bar, sang karaoke songs and so on. So he thought it was something informal, that he had established the informal kind of relationship with his Japanese colleagues. But the next day when he went to the meeting, and he was carrying forward or still maintaining that level of informality when speaking with his Japanese colleagues, senior managers, and so on. So he began to realize that actually in Japan, you need to know when you can, or when it's acceptable for you to be informal, to make these jokes and so on. But in other occasions, when you're back in the office, no, all of that should not be there anymore. Leave it out, right? Out from the meeting room. So these are things that I think we ought to be very careful about. Sometimes we feel that we are friendly with everyone. It's okay to make jokes about this and that, sometimes even throw out some sexual innuendos in between. Know your crowd. If you are with people that 100%, these are your friends, close friends, everyone think more or less same like you, then go ahead. I think it's something that's part of the casual banter or interaction between you. But when you are in a meeting and there are people who are not comfortable with this, then please do not, try and do something like that, because you are just making things awkward, not just for yourself, but also potentially for the meeting, and potentially can be something that can be not so good when it comes to the feedback or report being given to you or about you. Okay, so finally, when it comes to what are the strategies that you can use when it comes to cross-cultural communication, these are the general things that all of us, we have come across this throughout the session today, but let me just recap, clarify frequently. So if you don't understand something, you ask for clarification. If you realize that people don't understand, you try to clarify again. But again, clarifying again, sometimes when you have to do that, it can get into your nerves, isn't it? You feel that I've explained this to you already. Why do I have to explain this again? So itu kena ada kesabaran. You need to have some patience. Don't feel irritated if there is a need for you to clarify about something multiple times, because it could be a situation where it's just people don't understand you very well. It's a skill that we need to train ourselves. It could be like one same subject, but one person explains that how many times we still don't understand, but another person explains the same thing in his way, in a language that is easy for everyone to understand. Explain one time, everyone understand already. So that is something that, in a way, is it a natural talent? Maybe for some people, they are naturally better with that, but for some others, or some of us, I think we need to train ourselves to be able to explain things in such a way that to ensure that people understand. Use active listening, so means that you listen to all the information and also find things to be listened for us to listen to. So active over here means that you find out what other information that you need to listen to and engage in conversations. Basically, also I take part in conversation and discussion so that you would listen and get more input, and that would naturally result into more knowledge and awareness on your part. Aim for dialogue, not debate. No? It's not about trying to prove which one is correct or which one is better. Unless, of course, it's a report where you need to measure or you need to decide in terms of which one to follow, which project to approve, or which person to hire, and something else. But as much as possible, meetings, when it comes to communication, the process ought to be more a dialogue rather than a debate in terms of trying to prove your point. I personally, when I was in school, even though I was quite okay in English, I was never interested in debates. The reason why I wasn't is because debates to me, again, don't hate me for saying this. To those of you who are into debates, I feel debate sometimes is about just trying to prove that your argument is correct, even though or your argument should be accepted, even though you know in your heart it's not something correct. But it's just about winning the argument. So that is something that I think when it comes to as a language exercise, it's okay. It's because you are engaging into some kind of a competition about trying to prove a point. But when you are dealing with a real situation in an organization, in the society, or even family and so on, it shouldn't be about debating as in winning the argument. It's about trying to find the best solution. So finding the best solution is not about debates, it's about dialogue. It's about listening to all possible information, analyzing all different factors, listening to all points of view as best as possible, and then finally coming to a decision. You know, agree to disagree button. Are you suggesting something, or are you saying that we should be having something like that?
I think because you said okay, you don't like debate. I'm not actually saying that I'm suffering from a debater's curse, because I was really a debater in school,
right?
Whether it's Bahasa or English. So it's just that it depends on the situation. If it's like the setting is like, okay, if you go for a competition, of course you have to be making a point so that you get marks for it, and then you'll be like presenting your case, and then you want to win. But if it's between communication, between friends, between family, I agree with you that it should be a dialogue. Okay, but it's just a matter of fine line between trying to put your point to other people to understand, but in the same time also you have to get other people's input and then really access it, whether you want to accept it or not. So that's why by the end of it, okay, you really have to take it, okay, at that setting, whether you agree to disagree, or it's just that whatever things that happen during that thing is whether you move on and then imply it in your daily life, or it's just that it ends there. Meaning, okay, somebody, maybe if it's between your colleague, okay, you, like you said just now, there was somebody who was really opinionated in the meetings and everything, but after that he can be playful and then making jokes. So that's why, because I've read about, I've seen from this person, Simon Sinek said that everything that you decide actually being decided outside of the meeting room. It's your rapport with somebody or with the other party. So it's really this thing, because humans are social people. Okay, and then there are also things like extrovert, introvert, ambivert even. It's just depending on perception and also what is your target from my point of view. So everything is just that you have to access everything in one go at one time, and then it takes skills, social skills.
thank you for sharing that. I think we have no issues. I personally have no issues about what you have shared. I think it's something that I respect debating as a valid exercise when it comes to language skills, presentation skills. It's just that, like you said, we need to look into the context of the situation. What is the purpose of the discussion? Debates when it comes to competition is for the competition. I know also debating coaches will always emphasize the point that you debate for the competition, but at the end of the debate, when there is already a winner being declared, you respect that. There's no point. It's nothing should be taken personally or beyond the competition. So I think likewise, when it comes to dialogue and discussions that we have at any level, whether it's interpersonal communication or organizational communication, we discuss. It can be a debate in the sense that there is a group that is very adamant that this is the point of view that I think is correct. And there is others who argue on the contrary. So the debate can happen in that way, but eventually here is where you need to have like a good moderator to look into, finally deciding things and ensuring that everyone has the chance to explain his or her views. So every perspective is being considered before finally coming to a decision, right? So yeah, I think we are okay with that. Be structured and clear. So this is, again, I think cross-cultural communication happens as we come across this now, some examples because of miscommunication or misunderstanding. So it's always better or best way for you to explain everything in a clear manner. So that means, ensure that things are structured, things are clear. I don't want to come to the point that, you always need to write in a certain way or speak in a certain way. There are some people, the way they speak, they are structured to the point they say things like along the line that, there are 4 things I want to point across. Point number 1, point number 2, point number 3, point number 4. That one is more in terms of presentation style, which is, again, depends on the context of the situation. But structured over here simply means that you need to be clear about what you want. And if you disagree about something also, make sure you express your disagreement in such a way that there is a reason for that. The justification is there, the reason is given, and not just simply say something and just throw it out and it's left hanging and dangling over that. All right. Use questions effectively and often, but not in a way that is disrespectful. Right. Don't sometimes we, I've done that also, right? Unfortunately, when it comes to some examples of interactions I have with some people, I question them in such a way that it becomes rather demeaning. Say, what do you mean by that? And can you tell me more? I mean, how can you think in that way? And so those kind of line of questioning it shouldn't be like that. And the way that you ask should be more like respecting the point of view of the person, even though you disagree. So you put, put it in such a way that, can you explain more about this? Can you clarify further? Why do you say this? Can you explain again the reason for this? So more along that line. So rather than, being forceful to the point that you are, demeaning the person or patronizing the person. Invite feedback, do not just expect this, right? So I think this is something nice for all of us to have at all levels. Those of us who are teachers, lecturers, invite feedback from your students. Those of us who are, heads of departments and so on, invite feedback from your co-workers, from your subordinates and so on. Because we are all human beings. There are things that we may have overlooked. There are things that we assume people understand, but actually they don't. Now, I think all of us who are teachers, lecturers, we have come to that situation before where we thought that we have explained something very well. I've lectured about this, so many times, explained this with so many examples. We are still students who don't understand. So it could be various reasons for that, right? Especially when we have also more and more international students coming over here. So the way that you explain something, right? Maybe for the local students, they understand your lingo, they understand the context, the example that you have given, it's okay, they understand that. But for international students, maybe they don't. So you need to probably, tailor your explanation to also cater for them. And not to say that you need to prepare a whole lecture totally different only for international students, but ensure that, you first of all, open your door for consultation for them to ask you questions, and don't berate them or, get angry with them if they ask you, some basic questions, because it's just part of the job that we have. We need to try and clarify things as best as possible as many times also if we can, right, as to ensure that everyone understands. So it's a challenge, definitely. Inviting feedback is one of those things in life that is very much easy to say, but not that easy to do. Not especially, some people, they want to avoid maybe when it comes to receiving feedback and criticism. So they rather just simply ignore that. So that is something that we ought to avoid. Try to encourage that because it's part of the learning process. Grade your language to suit your counterpart relates to the point I mentioned just now. The way that we speak, do not assume that it is actually understood by people. A true story I can share. I've one rather interesting feedback I saw once in my teaching evaluation report. This is one of those subjective response that was written by the student. Students wrote something along the line that I like to hear Mr. Zaki in class, but I don't understand what he's saying. So means that, maybe he appreciates my language, but he doesn't quite understand what I'm trying to teach or the specific, details of it. So it's a compliment in a way, maybe that he likes or he or she likes my presentation style or lecturing style, but it's also a criticism that I need to bear in mind that I need to I don't want to use the word lower down. It's just like, ensure that you speak in such a way that your students understand, right? So it's not about you explaining to yourself. I think a lot of mistakes that we do, many of us teachers do, is we speak in such a way, we explain things to ourselves, and we assume that everyone thinks the same way, and they understand the context that we are having in our mind, but they don't. Right, so that's why it requires skills and patience for you to try and explain things in different ways, use as many different examples as possible, and just to ensure that the point gets across. Make sure that your verbal and nonverbal communication agrees. Now, this is something that, again, one of those things I feel you can train yourself. At the same time, nonverbal communication, gestures, and others, I feel it's something that you can let naturally also happen. You don't necessarily need to train yourself to be actors. I personally do not want to advocate that idea that we want to build or train social actors. But yes, it would be nice for you to know what are the things you can avoid or you should avoid about doing. All those hand gestures, for example, I think we ought to know about that. One particular example, specific incident I can recall also, just for sharing, right? And you can react or give your reaction to this. I remember having a situation where there was a job applicant who came, and then throughout the interview, she was, basically, she put her legs cross-legged, and she was shaking her legs. So that became something that amongst my other colleagues, one of them especially thought that was really a negative point on the part of this candidate, that we felt that it's not really suitable for the person to come and join the organization. Now, maybe you can say it's a bit of an overreaction on the part of my colleague over here, but understand that, when you are in that situation, a formal kind of setting, interview session, right, and you are cross-legged, and then you are shaking your leg, and you are making others who are observing you feel rather uncomfortable. Understandably, the person could have just been very nervous. That's it, right? So here is where, on our part, ourselves, and also the way we train our students, we ought to try to tell them that nervousness, anxiety is always there, but how do you keep that? How do you contain that? Something that can be trained also. You are nervous, right? Try not to shake your legs, keep it together, or put your hands onto your lap, hold it still, right? So that it's not going to be something that's going to distract others during that conversation, isn't it? Okay. Know yourself to know others. All right. Yeah, I think this is more in terms of cultural knowledge. I always like to say, when it comes to the first level of training or kind of building up your skills in relation to cross-cultural communication skills, it's about building cultural knowledge. So that's about building knowledge about yourself, your own culture, and also culture of other people. So when you have, great magnitude, a great level of knowledge about your own culture and cultures of other people, there's a lot for you to talk about. It's a lot of things that you can engage in conversation with. So that is something that I believe it's something that naturally should occur, especially for a country like ours, because we are a multicultural society, but it has become a challenge. And that is the reason, if I may, plug something, that's the reason why all students need to take MPU subjects, right? Because MPU subject is supposed to give you that, right? To give you that particular cultural knowledge, to increase your cultural competence so that you become much more skillful when it comes to cross-cultural communication. But of course, sometimes something gets lost in the whole process, and people are thinking more about the grades, about the burden of it, about the sub classes that you have to attend. Those are part of the process and the whole mechanism of it. But the whole goal and objective of MPU, I believe, is something really nice. It's just that we still need to fine-tune, possibly in terms of how do we get that across? How do we actually really use that for the purpose of building something that we're talking about today? All right, so these are other framework in terms of strategies for effective cross-cultural communication, something similar, something overlapping, right? So coming back to the point I mentioned in the start of the session just now, I mentioned that the key strategies when it comes to cross-cultural communication, there are three things: perception, curiosity, and the other one just now I did not reveal. The other one is actually respect. All right, so the last one is respect, means that, it's something which is beyond tolerance. Now, in discussions about cross-cultural communication or intercultural communication in the past, 20, 30 years ago, there's a lot of focus on the word tolerance. Right? So we want to build tolerance. But the word tolerance, even though, yes, at the basic level, it's something that is positive, but the overall connotation seems to be rather restrictive, because tolerance simply means that I'm okay that you exist, but that's it. I don't care about who you are. So respect is beyond tolerance, means that you tolerate their existence or acknowledge their existence, other people, other cultures and so on, but you also respect that this is how they do things. And then you try to work together around that. But again, when I say respect over here, doesn't mean that you need to change yourself all the time in terms of you come here, you do that and so on. There is a saying that we have in the Malay language that, again, this is something that I'm inviting some kind of criticism over here. There is a saying over here in Malay, say that masuk kandang kambing menembik, masuk kandang kerbau menguap, means if you enter a goat's shed, you make a sound like a goat. You go to a buffalo's shed, you make a sound like a buffalo. Now, the context of this is just about being adaptive, but if it is explained in a literal way, as I've heard some people do, which is you go here, you act like this, you go here, you act like that. Again, it somehow, to me, my impression is it breeds the kind of breeds the kind of argument that we need to be pretenders. You pretend to be like that, pretend to be like this, and I feel that's not really advocating something genuine and of high integrity. So it's about being adaptive, but remain true to yourself. So it's not about trying to lower your standing to the point that you do something just because other people are doing, right? Especially when it comes to indulging into certain things that are, unethical or borderline illegal, right? So just because everyone is doing it, the culture seems to permeate or to tolerate this, and it's okay for me to do it also. That is not something that I feel ought to be part of the message that I should be putting across as a teacher, and definitely also as a parent. So in the end, what I feel is when it comes to cross-cultural communication, when you are dealing with people from different cultures, especially when you are there for the first time or during the first few months and things like that, I think these are practical examples of advice that you can tell yourself: speak less, listen more, react less, observe more. And then the next level is talk less, observe more, judge less, and learn more. Right? So the mistakes that we have done, I'm sure all of us, myself also, if I were to reflect on the different stages in my life, the mistakes that we have done is we tend to judge and perceive things according to our own personal cultural lenses, our own cultural viewpoints. So as a result, that we become judgmental and say that's wrong, that's not right, that's dirty, that's not correct. There's all kinds of things. So to a certain extent, those things cannot be avoided. These are dealing with things such as ethnocentrism and cultural stereotype. These are part of the whole cultural, psychological baggage that we have because of our upbringing, our socialization, the friends that we have, the peers that we have, the people that we grew up with, the school that we went to, the kind of dinner, family table talk that sometimes that people have. I'm sure. I mean, many of us have had, family members who make racial jokes about this, jokes about that. So it's part of the things that is part of our psyche is that. So it influences in terms of how we make perception about people, especially someone new or someone that that maybe fits that stereotype that we have in terms of the person's profile, background, and so on. So we have that in our mind, certain sentiments and prejudice and so on. No, not prejudice and stereotypes in your mind, because prejudice is already action. So, so you have those thinking is there. Now, from a academic psychological point of view, a point of view that I like to embrace more is that we know it's there. We acknowledge it exists, and it's something inevitable. You cannot erase that. You can't erase those things. It's part of your mind. It's part of your upbringing. But what you can do is you control that, which means that whatever judgment or whatever perception that you have in your mind, first impression that you have about someone, you can keep that in your mind, but don't talk about it. And observe more, learn more about that person, learn more about the culture, and keep an open mind that you can learn something more and appreciate them more as you know them more and more. So when you have that, then you should be okay working with anyone. You understand that, these people are the way they are, and recognize also individual differences, individual strengths and weaknesses, and don't simply label people because of their cultural background. These people are all like that. These people are all like that. All right, so open your mind to be able to objectively analyze and observe things so that you are able to, work together with anyone despite of their background, and then, at the same time also maintain your level of not to say purity, but your cultural identity, your genuine cultural identity. In Malay we call jati diri, and so that you interact in such a way that you retain your cultural values and so on, but you learn to respect and navigate the differences that you may have with others. Okay, so that's the whole point in terms of the whole campaign that we have over here in Malaysia and also in UOW about diversity, inclusion, equity that we have, DEI framework that we have in these organizations, actually all part of that. Okay, so the key takeaways, if I may summarize, one of the things I hope I've managed to put the point across is that first point, when it comes to cultural competence, build your cultural knowledge, learn about different cultures, then your cultural competence will increase and cross-cultural communication skills will improve. Number two, what was number two? Yeah, learn. So basically, I think relates to point number one, which is to learn about others. So, so if you were to deal when it comes to a different cultural situation or dealing with some other people, do some homework, learn about your audience. So, some of you over here are English teachers. When we teach about presentation skills or public speaking skills, we talk about audience analysis, isn't it? So we analyze the crowd, expect or understand about their profile and so on. Same thing also when you're working with colleagues or you know that you're receiving people from a certain country and so on. Do some homework about who they are and what kind of maybe things I should know about, the do's and don'ts, things I shouldn't say, or the kind of, topics to be avoided and we talk about just now, and gestures that maybe I shouldn't do. So do that homework. I think it's something that needs to be, that's good for all of us to have. And number three, again, emphasizing the last point over there that I've been talking about a lot just now. I hope I don't irritate people with saying this again. All this message and information that I've been sharing, I don't believe that it is something that is to be taken as purely impression management. which means that just about creating impression so that people like you. It ought to be about, again, maintaining your cultural identity, be genuine, be sincere, and while doing that, you respect others. All right, so that's the whole point. Thank you very much, everyone. Still have about 10 minutes for 12:30. If there are any feedback and questions, I would very much welcome anyone to share. Please go ahead. Anyone? Hazim already stopped the recording. Is it? I'm supposed to finish at 12. I thought you gave me a schedule until 1 o'clock, right?
Yes,
anyone? Yes. Can I maybe get like one person to ask a question or maybe give some kind of reflection just to maybe conclude things? Trying to invite feedback over here. Seorang wakil, anyone?
If I may add.
Yes, go ahead.
I think I'm always fascinated by culture, and I'm actually interested about environment and also how you perceive things. Maybe if like third culture kid, how do they respond to their environment? Especially if you come from like cross-cultural marriage, and then how the second generation, the kids will adapt from their grandparents and also from their own parents' culture. And also maybe if you are raised up in another country which is different from your own culture, okay, not necessarily from mixed marriage. So it's actually my main thing is I feel that never stop learning and also always be curious of what other people. It's not like menyebok or anything, but true. If you if you are being perceptive and also you are like the summary that you shared just now, observe more, and it's just that something that might be so little can make a difference. Like just now you said about the gesture, it's just a flip of hand. It means totally different. It's like different kind of at the opposite end of the rainbows. So it's actually, if you are really open to the difference, is actually how you find the similarities.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. So definitely it's about being aware, and one of the key strategies is about curious perception and curiosity. So you need to be curious. If you really are concerned about cross-cultural communication skills, you need to be curious. Curious in the sense you want to learn about different cultures, about different people, not just simply learn, you know, for business purposes, how I can use this information to win him over, to win the project, and to genuinely know about others, so that, you know, when you communicate, you understand naturally later on what are the things that you can do and cannot do. Yeah, on the point about intercultural marriages or children from intercultural marriages, I probably can talk about that also because of my, you know, my own experience and my own kids as well. But yeah, I think that would be a different thing altogether lah. But yes, my kids are unique in a sense that they have a Malay parent like me, and then my late wife was Chinese, and not just Chinese, but also from mainland China. So definitely there are certain things that they have gone through, my experience also, you know, as well, and they also their experience dealing with, you know, having family, one in Malaysia, the other one in China. So there are some, you know, stories that perhaps I can share, but not here lah, some other time. Hi, anyone else? Okay, if not, thank you very much, everyone, for the participation, for being here. Firstly, is it Shuhada? You raised your hand, or did you talk this now?
It was previously. I think it's okay.
Thank you again, everyone. Thank you again, Hazim, for organizing this. So I hope, if not much, at least there's something that we have all learned from today's session, and hopefully we can all take the positive points and see how they can benefit us. If there are any things which is negative or anything, if I said that may have hurt your feelings, or you may not take it positively, I sincerely apologize. Right. So thank you very much again. Have a nice weekend. Over to you, Hazin.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Zaki. On behalf of TLC and Mr. Gabriel himself, thank you for your time and thank you for your wonderful session today. And I hope the participants today got very, very fruitful information about these topics. And I hope we can venture more in future about this topic, maybe more specifics, because the cross culture maybe it's like more general, and maybe we can discuss more, Mr. Zaki, about this in future. And thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, and have a good weekend.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.